Welcome to Imagined Verse. Today we bring you an unforgettable story. What if Harry Potter reborn in the Vampire Diaries as the original Tribrid and married Caroline Forbes and Rebekah Mikaelson? Loving our content? Smash that like button and join our family by subscribing. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Now, let the story begin. Chapter 1: The Rebirth Blood. The metallic scent filled Harrison's nostrils as he blinked awake, his mind foggy with disconnected memories. His body felt wrong, too strong, too aware of every sound within miles. The forest around him pulsed with life, creatures scurrying through underbrush, hearts beating a frantic rhythm that called to something primal within him. Not again, he muttered, pushing himself up from the forest floor. His clothes were torn and stained dark with blood that wasn't his own. The moon hung full and accusing overhead, bathing the Virginia woodland in silver light. Harrison Mikaelson, at least that's who he was now, had lived this moment too many times over his long existence, waking after a blackout with evidence of violence he couldn't remember committing. But tonight was different. The dreams had been more vivid than ever before. A castle. A forest unlike this one, ancient, forbidden. A snake-faced man with red eyes. A flash of green light. Avada Kedavra, he whispered, the words feeling both foreign and painfully familiar on his tongue. The phrase triggered a cascade of images: a lightning-shaped scar, round glasses, a snowy owl, two friends whose faces remained frustratingly blurred. Harrison pressed his palms against his temples, willing the fragments to form a coherent picture. For centuries, he'd experienced these dreams, these memories that couldn't possibly be his. Elijah insisted they were manifestations of guilt, the mind of a vampire creating elaborate fantasies to cope with immortality. Klaus dismissed them entirely, calling them a weakness to be overcome. Rebekah alone had seemed to understand, had listened without judgment on those rare nights when he'd confided in her. A twig snapped nearby, and Harrison's head jerked toward the sound, his hybrid senses immediately on alert. Vampire. Young. Female. I know you're there, he called out, his voice carrying easily through the trees. Your stealth needs work. Caroline Forbes stepped into the clearing, moonlight glinting off her blonde hair. Her blue eyes narrowed as she took in his blood-soaked appearance. Rough night? She asked, her tone deliberately casual, though Harrison could hear the tension beneath it. Or should I be calling Sheriff Forbes about missing hikers? Despite himself, Harrison smiled. Caroline Forbes had been a vampire for barely a year, and yet she approached him, an original, with the confidence of someone who'd lived 10 lifetimes. Animal blood, he replied, gesturing to his shirt. Werewolf transformations always leave me hungry. Her eyebrows shot up. Werewolf? But you're a vampire. Yes. Harrison ran a hand through his dark hair, absently touching the spot on his forehead where, in his dreams, a scar had been. I'm many things, Caroline. Most of which your little Scooby gang hasn't figured out yet. She crossed her arms, defiant. Is that why you've been watching us? Lurking around Mystic Falls for months without introducing yourself to Stefan and Damon? The Salvatore brothers and I have history. Harrison sighed, looking up at the moon. The pull of it had faded, his werewolf sides sated for another month. And frankly, I've been around long enough to recognize when a town is circling the supernatural drain. I'm here to make sure it doesn't affect my family. Your family? Caroline took a step closer, curiosity overcoming caution. You mean the originals? Klaus hasn't been seen in decades. A branch cracked behind them, and both vampires turned, fangs instinctively dropping. Harrison relaxed first, recognizing the newcomer's scent before she appeared. I wouldn't be so certain of that. Came a cultured, feminine voice. Rebekah Mikaelson stepped into the clearing, as stunning and deadly as Harrison remembered. Her blonde hair fell in perfect waves, her expression a practiced mask of boredom that didn't quite reach her eyes. Those eyes, ancient, hurt, and fiercely intelligent, fixed on Harrison with an intensity that made his chest ache. Sister, he said softly. Brother, she replied, then glanced dismissively at Caroline. I see you've met Mystic Falls' newest vampire cheerleader. Caroline bristled. And I see the original mean girl has returned. Lucky us. Rebekah's smile was sharp as a blade. Careful, little one. I was tearing out throats when your ancestors were still learning to farm. Enough, Harrison said, stepping between them. Rebekah, what are you doing here? Last I heard, you were in Paris with that artist. Something flashed across Rebekah's face, pain quickly masked by indifference. Claude was boring. And Nick sent word. He's coming to Mystic Falls. The news hit Harrison like a physical blow. His brother coming here now? When the dreams were stronger than ever? Why? He demanded. The doppelganger, Rebekah replied simply. Caroline's intake of breath was sharp. Elena? What does Klaus want with Elena? Harrison and Rebekah exchanged a look loaded with centuries of shared knowledge. Before either could answer, a searing pain shot through Harrison's head. He staggered, bracing against a tree as images assaulted him, not of the boy with the lightning scar this time, but of a ritual. Blood. Moonlight. A sacrifice. Harrison? Rebekah was beside him instantly, her hand on his arm. The concern in her voice was genuine, a crack in her carefully maintained facade. It's happening again, he ground out, meeting her gaze. The memories, they're getting stronger. What memories? Caroline asked, moving closer despite herself. What's wrong with him? Rebekah's expression hardened as she looked at Caroline. Nothing that concerns you. It does if it involves Elena, Caroline countered. Harrison straightened, forcing the pain back through sheer will. Both of you stop. Caroline, go back to your friends. Tell them nothing of meeting us. It's safer that way. Safer for who? Caroline challenged. For them, Harrison replied, his green eyes flashing yellow for a brief moment. And for you. Caroline stood her ground, surprising him. No. Elena is my friend. If she's in danger, I need to know why. Harrison studied her, this baby vampire with barely a year of undeath behind her, standing up to creatures who had walked the earth for a millennium. In her defiance, he saw something familiar. A loyalty that tugged at those fragmentary memories. A redhead, he murmured, almost to himself. And a boy with freckles. What are you talking about? Caroline asked, confused. Rebekah's hand tightened on his arm. Harrison, you're not making sense. We need to get you somewhere safe before Nick arrives. The mention of Klaus seemed to anchor Harrison back to reality. He nodded, then turned to Caroline. My brother wants to break a curse, he said. A curse that's bound his werewolf side for 1,000 years. To do it, he needs to sacrifice a doppelganger, your Elena Gilbert. Caroline's face went pale. Sacrifice? As in kill, Rebekah confirmed, her tone matter-of-fact. Among other requirements. A vampire, a werewolf, and the Petrova doppelganger, all sacrificed under the full moon. Caroline shook her head, backing away. I have to warn them. In a blur of movement too fast for even Caroline to track, Harrison was in front of her, his hands gently but firmly on her shoulders. Listen to me. If Klaus knows you've been warned, he'll kill everyone you care about just to make a point. Then what am I supposed to do? Caroline demanded, her voice rising with panic. Stand by while he murders my best friend. No, Harrison said, his green eyes intensely focused on hers. You're going to help me stop him. Rebekah made a sound of disbelief. Have you lost your mind? This is Nick we're talking about. You can't stop him, Harrison. I can, he insisted, not looking away from Caroline. But I'll need allies inside the Salvatore circle. Caroline's expression wavered between suspicion and desperate hope. Why would you help us? He's your brother. Harrison released her shoulders and stepped back, shadows playing across his features. Because there are some lines even I won't let him cross. And because... He hesitated, the half-memory stirring again. Because I know what it's like to be marked for sacrifice. The words hung in the air between them, laden with meaning Harrison himself didn't fully understand. But they felt true, bone deep, soul true. Rebekah moved to his side, her eyes searching his face. What aren't you telling me, Harrison? What's really happening to you? Before he could answer, the forest around them went unnaturally quiet. The ambient sounds, insects, nocturnal animals, even the rustling of leaves, ceased all at once. We're not alone, Harrison whispered. In the next instant, figures emerged from the darkness, vampires, at least a dozen, their movements coordinated and predatory. At their center stood a woman with long, dark hair and cold eyes. Catherine. Caroline breathed. The woman's lips curved in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Not quite, sunshine. Her gaze shifted to Harrison and Rebekah. Mikaelsons. Just who I was looking for. Harrison stepped forward, positioning himself slightly in front of both women. And you are? Isabel Fleming, she replied. Elena Gilbert's birth mother. And currently Klaus Mikaelson's most valuable informant. Nick sent you? Rebekah asked, suspicion evident in her voice. Not exactly. Isabel's smile widened. I'm here to deliver a message. The sacrifice happens at the next full moon, with or without your cooperation. She looked directly at Harrison. And he knows about your condition, brother. Harrison felt a chill run through him. What condition would that be? The dreams. The memories that aren't yours. Isabel tilted her head. The magic you shouldn't be able to perform, but somehow can. The silence that followed was deafening. Harrison was aware of Rebekah's sharp intake of breath, of Caroline's confusion, but his focus remained on Isabel and the vampires surrounding them. Tell my brother, he said quietly, that if he wants to discuss my mental health, he can do it face to face. Isabel's expression hardened. He also said to remind you what happens to those who stand in his way. Even family. A dagger in the heart. Rebekah murmured. Centuries in a box. Not for our unique brother here. Isabel countered. Klaus has something special planned for you, Harrison. Something befitting the abomination among abominations. The term struck Harrison like a physical blow, not because of Isabel's obvious attempt to provoke him, but because it echoed in his mind in another voice. A cold, high voice speaking of prophecies and chosen ones. Neither can live while the other survives. The fragment of memory sparked something within him, power that had lain dormant for too long. Harrison felt it rise, familiar yet strange, coursing through veins that had carried vampire blood for a millennium. You can tell my brother, Harrison said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, that I remember more each day. And if he comes for Elena Gilbert or anyone else in this town, he'll be facing more than just his hybrid brother. He raised his hand, a gesture that felt as natural as breathing, though he'd never consciously done it before. Incendio. The word left his lips like a long-forgotten prayer, and fire erupted in a circle around them, causing Isabel's vampires to leap back with shouts of alarm. The flames rose unnaturally high, their heat intense but somehow not touching Harrison, Rebekah, or Caroline. Isabel's confident expression faltered for the first time. What are you? Harrison met her gaze through the wall of flames, his green eyes reflecting the firelight. I'm still figuring that out. Give Klaus my regards. With a gesture of dismissal that sent the flames surging higher, Harrison turned away. He grabbed Rebekah's hand with his right and, after a moment's hesitation, Caroline's with his left. We need to go, he said. Now. Without waiting for their response, he pulled them deeper into the forest, away from Isabel and her minions. The fire would hold. He knew this without understanding how he knew it, but Klaus's messenger had just confirmed his worst fears. His brother knew about the changes happening within him, and that made everyone associated with Harrison a potential target. What the hell was that? Caroline demanded once they'd put significant distance between themselves and Isabel. She yanked her hand free of Harrison's grip. The fire. You said a word and it just appeared. Magic, Rebekah said, her voice uncharacteristically subdued. But that's impossible. Vampires can't do magic. Even originals. Harrison stopped walking, turning to face them in a small clearing illuminated by moonlight filtering through the trees. The enormity of what had just happened, of what he just revealed, settled over him like a physical weight. Apparently I can, he said simply. Caroline shook her head in disbelief. So you're what, a vampire witch? Witch, werewolf, vampire, Harrison clarified, running a hand through his dark hair. What Isabel called an abomination among abominations. A tribrid, Rebekah breathed. But how? Our mother's spell, I don't know. Harrison interrupted. All I know is that these abilities have been emerging slowly for centuries. And the dreams, the memories, they're getting stronger. More coherent. Caroline looked between them, clearly struggling to process everything she'd witnessed. So, you're having identity issues on top of being some impossible supernatural hybrid, and now Klaus wants to sacrifice my best friend to break a curse? Is that about right? Despite everything, Harrison found himself smiling at her bluntness. That covers the highlights, yes. And you want my help to stop Klaus? Caroline continued. When even your own sister thinks that's impossible. I didn't say it was impossible. Rebekah protested. Just suicidal. Harrison's smile faded. I need someone inside the Salvatore circle. Someone who can help me protect Elena without alerting Klaus that I'm involved. He held Caroline's gaze. You're perfect for that role. Caroline crossed her arms. And why should I trust you? Either of you? You're originals. Klaus is your brother. Because if I wanted Elena dead, Harrison replied evenly, I wouldn't have just revealed my biggest secret to save her life. Silence fell between them as Caroline considered his words. The forest had returned to its normal state, insects chirping, nocturnal creatures rustling in the underbrush, the distant hoot of an owl. Fine, she finally said. I'll help you. But I'm not lying to my friends. They deserve to know what they're up against. Harrison nodded. Tell them about Klaus and the sacrifice. But nothing about me, not what I can do, not about the dreams. Nothing. Why the secrecy? Caroline challenged. Because knowledge is power, Rebekah answered for him. And in our family, power imbalances get people killed. Harrison glanced at his sister, grateful for her understanding even if he sensed her confusion and hurt at being kept in the dark about his changing nature. Meet me tomorrow night, he told Caroline. The old Lockwood property, by the cellar entrance. Come alone. Caroline hesitated, then nodded. Tomorrow night. She took a step back, preparing to leave, then paused. That spell you did, the fire. I've never seen anything like it. Harrison's expression turned distant. Neither have I. Not in this lifetime, anyway. With a last curious look, Caroline disappeared into the forest, vampire speed carrying her back toward Mystic Falls proper. Harrison watched the spot where she'd vanished, acutely aware of Rebekah's scrutiny. 1,000 years, she said quietly. 1,000 years, and you never told me. Harrison turned to her, seeing the hurt beneath her anger. I didn't understand it myself, Becca. The dreams, the flashes of power, they were rare, easily dismissed. Until recently. What changed? I don't know. Harrison ran a hand over his face. Maybe it's this place, Mystic Falls. Maybe it's the doppelganger. Or maybe. He trailed off, unwilling to voice his deepest fear. Maybe what? Rebekah pressed. Maybe I'm going mad, he admitted. Centuries of blood and violence finally breaking my mind. Rebekah's expression softened slightly. She reached out, her hand cool against his cheek, a gesture of affection she rarely allowed herself to show. You're not mad, Harrison. Infuriating, secretive, and apparently magical, but not mad. He leaned into her touch, allowing himself a moment of vulnerability with the one person who had been a constant throughout his long existence. There's something else, he said. Something I haven't told anyone. Rebekah waited, her hand still on his cheek. In the dreams, I'm someone else. Someone named Harry Potter. The name felt right on his tongue, like coming home after a long journey. And in those dreams I died. Willingly walked to my death to save everyone I loved. Rebekah's eyes widened. Harrison, and sometimes, he continued, needing to get it all out. I wonder if that's why I'm here. If somehow, my soul was reborn into this body, but my memories were lost until now. That's impossible? Harrison gave a bitter laugh. More impossible than a vampire who can do magic? More impossible than a hybrid who can turn at will. Rebekah dropped her hand, taking a step back to study him. If what you're saying is true, if you're some reborn soul from another world or time, then what does that make you? Are you my brother at all? The question cut deeper than any blade could have. Harrison reached for her, relieved when she didn't pull away. I am Harrison Mikaelson. I remember our childhood in the old world. I remember the day Henrik died. I remember Mother's spell and Father's rage and the first time we realized what we had become. He took her hands in his. Whether these other memories are madness or magic, I am still your brother. That will never change. Something in his words seemed to reassure her. Rebekah squeezed his hands once before releasing them. Then we need to figure out what's happening to you before Nick arrives. And we need a plan to deal with the doppelganger situation. Agreed. Harrison nodded. But first, I need to clean up. Can't strategize while covered in blood and forest debris. Rebekah's lips curved in a small smile. Some things never change. You were always the cleanest of our brothers. One of us had to have standards. He replied lightly, grateful for the momentary return to their usual banter. As they made their way through the forest toward Harrison's temporary home, a modernized cabin on the outskirts of Mystic Falls, he felt the weight of the night's revelations pressing on him. He had revealed his secret to Rebekah and, by extension, to Caroline Forbes. He had openly defied Klaus through Isabel. And most significantly, he had accessed magic that should have been impossible for his vampire nature. The dreams would come tonight, he knew. Stronger, more vivid than ever before. Part of him feared what he might discover about Harry Potter and his past life. But another part, a part that felt increasingly like his true self, welcomed the knowledge. Because if Harrison Mikaelson was truly the reborn soul of Harry Potter, then perhaps he finally had the means to stand against his brother and protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Perhaps this time, his willing sacrifice had led not to an ending, but to a new beginning. And as the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, Harrison felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries: hope. Caroline Forbes burst into the Salvatore boarding house without knocking, her vampire speed carrying her from the front door to the library in seconds. She skidded to a halt at the sight of Stefan, Damon, and Elena gathered around the fireplace, their expressions grim. "We have a problem," Caroline announced breathlessly, then paused as she registered their faces. "Wait, do you already know?" Damon raised his bourbon glass in a mock toast. "If by know you mean are we aware that the original vampire Klaus is coming to turn Elena into a human sacrifice, then yes, we're up to speed." Caroline blinked. "How, Catherine?" Stefan explained, his arm protectively around Elena. "She escaped the tomb long enough to deliver the warning, then disappeared again." Elena looked pale but determined. "Where have you been, Caroline? We've been trying to reach you all night." Caroline hesitated, Harrison's warning echoing in her mind. "Tell them about Klaus and the sacrifice." "But nothing about me. I ran into some vampires in the woods. They work for Klaus." That got everyone's attention. Damon set down his drink and moved closer. "What did they say? What did they want?" "Their leader, a woman named Isabel, said the sacrifice happens at the next full moon." Caroline watched as Elena's face went even paler. "Isabel?" Elena whispered. "My birth mother?" Caroline nodded grimly. "She's working with Klaus now, apparently." "Fantastic," Damon muttered. "Mommy dearest is helping the big bad wolf eat her daughter. This family needs therapy." Stefan shot his brother an irritated look before focusing on Caroline. "Did they say anything else?" Anything about how Klaus plans to carry out the sacrifice? Caroline thought of the confrontation in the woods, Harrison's display of impossible magic, Rebekah's presence, the arrangement to meet tomorrow night. She had promised to help them, but her loyalty to her friends ran deeper. He needs 3 sacrifices, she said. A vampire, a werewolf, and the doppelganger. All killed as part of a ritual under the full moon. We already knew that much from Catherine, Damon said dismissively. But did you know that Klaus is already in contact with people in Mystic Falls? Caroline countered. That he has spies watching us? That the sacrifice is happening at the next full moon, not some vague future date. The room fell silent as her words sank in. 3 weeks, Elena finally said, her voice surprisingly steady. We have 3 weeks to figure out how to stop him. Stefan pulled her closer. We'll find a way, Elena. We won't let Klaus hurt you. And how exactly do you plan to stop an original vampire who's supposedly the most powerful creature on the planet? Caroline asked, thinking of Harrison's confidence when he said he could stop his brother. We kill him, Damon stated flatly. Before he can complete the ritual. With what? Caroline pressed. Catherine said originals can't be killed. Every creature has a weakness, Stefan replied. We just need to find Klaus's. Caroline thought of Harrison, part vampire, part werewolf, part witch, and wondered what weaknesses such a being might have. And whether he was truly on their side, or playing some deeper game. There's something else, she said slowly, choosing her words carefully. I've heard rumors that Klaus isn't alone. That other originals might be coming to Mystic Falls. Damon cursed under his breath. Because one original wasn't enough of a problem. Do you know which ones? Stefan asked, his expression grave. Caroline shook her head. Just be careful. All of you. Klaus isn't the only threat we might be facing. Elena reached out and squeezed Caroline's hand. Are you okay? You seemed shaken. For a brief moment, Caroline considered telling them everything, about Harrison, about Rebekah, about the meeting planned for tomorrow night. But the image of Harrison's face as he spoke of protecting Elena flashed in her mind. The sincerity in his eyes when he said he wouldn't let his brother cross certain lines. I'm fine, she assured Elena with a smile that felt strained. Just tired and worried about you. We all are, Stefan said. But we'll get through this together, like we always do. Caroline nodded, hoping his confidence wasn't misplaced. Because after what she'd witnessed in the forest tonight, she wasn't sure any of them, even the Salvatore brothers, were prepared for what was coming. I should go, she said. My mom will be wondering where I am. Plus, I need to shower and change before people start asking why I'm covered in forest debris. Keep your phone on, Damon instructed. If Catherine decides to grace us with more information, we'll need everyone on standby. Caroline agreed and made her goodbyes, her mind already racing with plans for tomorrow night's meeting with Harrison. As she stepped out into the cool morning air, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking a dangerous line between 2 powerful forces, her friends and the mysterious original who claimed he could stop Klaus. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a question lingered. What had Harrison meant when he said he knew what it was like to be marked for sacrifice? What secrets was he still keeping, beyond the impossible magic he displayed? Caroline Forbes had never considered herself particularly brave. Determined, yes. Stubborn, definitely. But brave? That was Elena's department. Yet as she raced through the awakening town toward her home, she felt a resolve strengthening within her. Whatever game Harrison Mikaelson was playing, whatever secrets he was keeping, she would uncover the truth. For Elena's sake. For all their sakes. And maybe, just a little bit, because the enigmatic green-eyed original had looked at her with a respect few others had ever shown her. As if he saw not just what she was, but what she could become. Harrison stood at the window of his cabin, watching the sun climb higher in the morning sky. Sleep had eluded him, as he'd known it would. Too many thoughts, too many half-formed memories competing for attention in his mind. The cabin itself was modest by Mikaelson's standards, a restored hunter's lodge with modern amenities hidden within its rustic exterior. Harrison had purchased it decades ago under one of his many aliases, maintaining it as a sanctuary for those rare occasions when he needed distance from his siblings. Like now. "You haven't slept," Rebekah observed from the doorway behind him. She had claimed his spare bedroom without asking permission, typical Rebekah behavior that he found oddly comforting in its familiarity. "Neither have you," he replied without turning. She moved to stand beside him at the window. "I was watching you, making sure you didn't set the house on fire with your new parlor tricks." Despite himself, Harrison smiled. "My control is better than that." "Is it?" Rebekah raised an eyebrow. "Because until last night, I didn't know you had anything to control." The gentle accusation hung between them. Harrison sighed, turning to face his sister fully. In the morning light, with her hair loose around her shoulders and her face free of makeup, she looked younger, closer to the girl she had been before they were turned. "I've only been able to do small things before," he admitted. "Moving objects without touching them. Sensing emotions beyond what our vampire abilities allow. Once, in the 1700s, I healed a child who should have died from plague. I convinced myself it was her own resilience, not anything I had done. And now? Now the power feels accessible. Controllable." Harrison flexed his fingers, remembering the sensation of the magic flowing through him when he cast the fire spell. "As if it's always been there, waiting for me to remember how to use it." Rebekah studied him for a long moment. "This Harry Potter person, in your dreams, he was a witch?" "A wizard," Harrison corrected automatically, then paused, surprised at the certainty of his response. "Yes. I went to a school for magic." "A castle." "Hogwarts," Rebekah said quietly. Harrison's head snapped up. "How did you've said that name in your sleep?" She explained. "For centuries. I always thought it was nonsense, just a dream word." She hesitated. "You've said other names too. Ron. Hermione. Dumbledore." Each name sent a jolt through Harrison, like touching a live wire. "My friends," he whispered. "And my mentor. You speak of them as if they were real people." They were. To Harry, they were. Harrison turned back to the window, unable to bear the confusion and concern in his sister's eyes. "I know how it sounds, Becca. Believe me, I've spent centuries thinking I was losing my mind. And now? Now I'm not so sure." He pressed his forehead against the cool glass. "What if it's true? What if I am this Harry Potter, somehow reborn or transported into the body of Harrison Mikaelson? What does that make me?" Rebekah was silent for so long that Harrison thought she might not answer. When she did, her voice was uncharacteristically gentle. "It makes you my brother," she said simply. "The same brother who taught me to swim in the lakes of our homeland. Who held me during storms when we were children. Who stood against Michael when he raged." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "Whatever else you are or were, you are Harrison Mikaelson. My brother. An original." The simple acceptance in her words threatened to undo him. Harrison covered her hand with his own, squeezing gently in silent gratitude. "So," Rebekah continued, her tone shifting to something more practical. "This Caroline Forbes. Do you trust her?" Harrison considered the question. "Trust is a strong word for someone I've just met. But I believe she'll help us protect Elena Gilbert." "Because she's Elena's friend," Rebekah said with a touch of disdain. "These doppelgangers, always at the center of everything." "Jealous, sister?" Harrison teased, glad for the lighter topic. Rebekah scoffed. "Of a human girl whose greatest achievement is looking like every other Petrova doppelganger? Hardly. She's important to Caroline," Harrison pointed out. "And for now, at least, Caroline is important to our plans." "Just to our plans?" Rebekah's tone turned sly. "I saw how you looked at her, brother. Like a man seeing the sun after a century of darkness." Harrison shook his head. "Don't start, Becca. Caroline Forbes is a means to an end, A way to protect Elena without revealing ourselves to Klaus prematurely. If you say so. Rebekah's smile was knowing. Although I can't blame you. She has fire, that one. Not many baby vampires would stand up to an original the way she did. Before Harrison could respond, a sharp pain lanced through his head. He gasped, bracing himself against the window frame as images flashed behind his eyes. A room full of children, all wearing black robes. A woman with severe features demonstrating how to turn a match into a needle. His own small hand, holding a wooden wand, attempting the same transformation. Harrison? Rebekah's voice seemed to come from far away. The vision shifted. He was older now, standing in a circular room with a silver sword in his hands. A massive serpent lay dead at his feet, and an ethereal boy, handsome, dark-haired, radiating malevolence, was screaming in rage. Harrison! Hands gripped his shoulders, shaking him. Come back! With an effort that felt physical, Harrison pulled himself out of the memory. He blinked to find Rebekah's face inches from his own, her expression twisted with fear. I'm here, he managed, his voice hoarse. I'm back. Rebekah's relief was palpable. What happened? Your eyes, they weren't yours. They were glowing. Harrison straightened, the pain already receding. Another memory. From Harry's life. He swallowed hard. They're coming faster now. More complete. Because you used magic last night. Rebekah guessed. It triggered something. Perhaps. Harrison moved away from the window, needing space to think. Or perhaps it's this place. Mystic Falls sits on a convergence of ley lines, natural channels of magical energy. Maybe they're amplifying whatever connection I have to Harry Potter's memories. Then we should leave. Rebekah said decisively. Get you away from here before Nick arrives. Before these memories consume you entirely. Harrison shook his head. We can't. Not with the sacrifice looming. Why do you care so much about the doppelganger? Rebekah demanded. She's nothing to us. Because innocent people shouldn't die for the ambitions of the powerful. Harrison replied, the words coming automatically, and carrying the weight of absolute conviction. He blinked, surprised at his own vehemence. Rebekah stared at him. That doesn't sound like you. That sounds like Harry Potter. Harrison finished quietly. Yes, I know. A heavy silence fell between them, broken only by the distant calls of birds outside. What if I can't separate them? Harrison finally asked, voicing his deepest fear. What if Harrison Mikaelson and Harry Potter are becoming something else entirely? Someone new? Rebekah's face softened. Then we'll face that together. As we've faced everything for 1,000 years. Harrison nodded, grateful for her loyalty even as doubt gnawed at him. How long would that loyalty last if he continued to change? If Harrison Mikaelson, her beloved brother, became increasingly subsumed by the memories and personality of Harry Potter? We need a plan, he said, deliberately changing the subject. Klaus will arrive soon, and we need to be ready. Rebekah sighed but accepted the shift. What did you have in mind? First, we need to understand exactly what Klaus is planning for the sacrifice. Beyond the obvious. Harrison began to pace, finding comfort in the familiar motion. Then we need to find a way to stop him without revealing my condition. And where does Caroline Forbes fit into this? Harrison paused his pacing. She gives us access to Elena and the Salvatores. Through her, we can monitor their plans, make sure they don't do anything reckless. Like trying to kill an original? Rebekah's tone was dry. Exactly like that. Harrison resumed pacing. The Salvatores are young and arrogant enough to believe they can defeat Klaus through conventional means. They can't. And you can? Rebekah challenged. Harrison stopped again, meeting her gaze directly. With the right preparation, yes. Harry Potter defeated a powerful dark wizard. If I can access the full extent of his knowledge and power, combined with my original strength, then you might stand a chance, Rebekah concluded. She didn't sound convinced. More than a chance? Harrison insisted. But I need time. Time to understand these memories, to control the magic. Rebekah crossed her arms. And what about Elijah? Have you told him any of this? No. Harrison shook his head. Elijah's whereabouts have been unknown for months. And I'm not sure I trust him with this information. Not yet. But you trust me? The vulnerability in her question was so unlike Rebekah that Harrison crossed the room to her in an instant, taking her hands in his. With my life, he said simply. Always and forever, remember? A small smile curved her lips. Always and forever. She squeezed his hands once before releasing them. So, what next? Besides your clandestine meeting with the baby vampire tonight? Harrison considered. We need information. About the sacrifice, about Klaus's plans, about any potential allies or enemies in Mystic Falls. Leave that to me, Rebekah said, her smile turning predatory. Information gathering is a specialty of mine. And I have a few old acquaintances in town who owe me favors. Be careful, Harrison warned. If Klaus has spies here, I know how to be discreet, brother. She tilted her head. The question is, do you? Especially around Caroline Forbes. Harrison gave her a look. I told you, she's a means to an end. Keep telling yourself that. Rebekah patted his cheek condescendingly. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to make myself presentable before venturing into that quaint little town. Some of us still care about appearances. As she sashayed toward the bathroom, Harrison called after her. Try not to terrify the locals too much. Her laughter floated back to him, a rare sound that momentarily lightened the weight on his shoulders. Despite everything, the memories, the magic, the looming threat of Klaus, having Rebekah by his side made Harrison feel less alone than he had in centuries. Turning back to the window, he watched the sun climbing higher, casting long shadows across the forest. Somewhere in Mystic Falls, Caroline Forbes was probably explaining to her friends what she'd learned about Klaus and the sacrifice, careful, he hoped, to omit any mention of himself or Rebekah. Tonight, they would meet again. Tonight, perhaps, he would learn more about this brave young vampire who stood her ground against originals. And perhaps, in her presence, he might find more pieces of the puzzle that was Harry Potter, and understand why their souls had become so inexorably intertwined. Chapter 2. Blood Bonds. The old Lockwood property lay silent under the waxing moon, its abandoned cellar and trance partially hidden by decades of unchecked vegetation. Harrison Mikaelson leaned against a centuries-old oak tree, his keen senses scanning the surrounding forest. She was late. He checked his watch, a simple, elegant timepiece that had belonged to a French nobleman before Harrison relieved him of it in 1789. 10 minutes past the agreed meeting time. Not long by human standards, but vampires, especially young, eager ones like Caroline Forbes, typically prided themselves on punctuality. She's not coming. Rebekah emerged from the shadows of the trees, arms crossed and expression smug. She'd spent the day gathering information, which apparently required 4 shopping bags from Mystic Falls' modest boutiques. She'll be here, Harrison replied, more confident than he felt. Face it, brother. Your baby vampire has chosen loyalty to her friends over whatever dubious alliance you proposed. Rebekah examined her manicure with exaggerated interest. Can't say I blame her. We aren't exactly known for our trustworthiness. Harrison ignored the jab. You didn't have to come, Becca. I can handle one newborn vampire. And miss the opportunity to watch you get stood up. She smirked. Besides, someone needs to keep an eye on you. Make sure you don't start setting things on fire again. Before Harrison could respond, a twig snapped in the distance. Both originals tensed, their enhanced senses immediately focusing on the sound. Vampire, Rebekah whispered. And human? Harrison nodded, frowning. They'd specifically told Caroline to come alone. Either she had disobeyed or... Sorry I'm late. Caroline's voice called from the darkness. She stepped into the moonlit clearing, looking slightly disheveled. I had to shake a tail. What kind of tail? Harrison asked, moving forward. Damon Salvatore. Caroline replied with obvious annoyance. He's been watching me all day. I had to create a diversion. Rebekah raised an eyebrow. And what sort of diversion did you concoct? Caroline's smile was all teeth. I convinced Matt, my ex, to call Damon about a vampire emergency on the other side of town. Should keep him busy for a while. Despite himself, Harrison was impressed. Creative. But you weren't followed here? No. Caroline's confidence faltered slightly. I mean, I don't think so. I doubled back 3 times and used that vampire speed thing. Harrison exchanged a look with Rebekah. Young vampires were often careless, underestimating the hunting capabilities of older ones. Especially ones as determined as Damon Salvatore. Wait here. He told Caroline, then blurred into the forest with Rebekah right behind him. They moved in perfect sync, centuries of hunting together making words unnecessary. Harrison took the eastern perimeter while Rebekah swept west, their senses extended to maximum range. After a thorough search that lasted barely 2 minutes, they returned to find Caroline pacing nervously. We're clear, Harrison announced. For now. Caroline exhaled in relief. Good. Because we need to talk. Her gaze shifted between the siblings. I told my friends about Klaus and the sacrifice. But not about us, Rebekah stated, studying the younger vampire's face for any sign of deception. Not specifically, Caroline admitted. I just said I'd heard rumors that other originals might be coming to town. Harrison nodded, satisfied. And how did they react? Exactly how you'd expect. Caroline's expression darkened. Damon wants to kill Klaus before the ritual. Stefan wants to find another way to keep Elena safe. And Elena. She hesitated. Elena's being Elena. Brave face, refusing to let anyone else get hurt for her sake. Typical doppelganger martyr complex. Rebekah muttered. Caroline shot her a glare. She's my friend. And her death would break my brother's curse. Rebekah countered. So forgive me if I don't share your admiration for her selflessness. Harrison intervened before the argument could escalate. The important thing is that they're aware of the threat. Now we need to develop a plan to protect Elena without alerting Klaus to our involvement. About that. Caroline shifted uncomfortably. There's something I need to tell you first. She took a deep breath. I know who you are. Harrison froze, his mind racing through possibilities. Had she somehow discovered his connection to Harry Potter? Had Klaus contacted her? You're the original who disappeared. Caroline continued. The one Catherine mentioned once, Klaus's hybrid brother who vanished centuries ago. The one even other vampires think is just a myth. Relief flooded Harrison, followed quickly by wariness. What exactly did Catherine tell you? Not much. Caroline shrugged. Just that Klaus had a brother who was different, part werewolf like him, but also something else. Something that scared even Klaus. Rebekah laughed, the sound sharp in the quiet forest. Catherine Pierce, still spreading rumors from the 1400s. Impressive, even for her. Caroline looked between them. So it's true? You're Klaus's hybrid brother? I am Klaus's brother. Harrison confirmed cautiously. And yes, I'm a hybrid, vampire and werewolf. The something else is complicated. The magic, Caroline said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. I've been thinking about it all day. Vampires can't do magic. It's like supernatural law or something. But you did. Harrison studied her face, searching for fear or revulsion. Instead, he found only curiosity and something else, a glimmer of hope. Yes, he finally said. I can perform magic, though until recently, my abilities were limited. But how? No offense, but it breaks like every rule I've been told about vampires. Harrison glanced at Rebekah, who gave a small nod. He gestured toward the cellar entrance. Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private. The night has many ears. Caroline hesitated only briefly before following them down the moss-covered stone steps into the old Lockwood cellar. Harrison produced a small flame in his palm with a whispered, "Lumos," the word coming to him instinctively, illuminating the underground chamber. "Show off," Rebekah murmured, but Harrison caught her subtle smile. The cellar was surprisingly intact, considering its age. Roots had broken through the ceiling in places, and leaves littered the floor, but the stone walls remained solid. Iron rings, once used to restrain werewolves during transformation, still hung from the walls, a grim reminder of the Lockwood family's history. Harrison extinguished the magical light with the thought once Caroline had lit the old lantern she found on a ledge. "So," Caroline said, settling on a relatively clean stone bench. "Start talking. What exactly are you, and how are you going to help Elena?" Harrison paced the small space, gathering his thoughts. How much should he reveal? Caroline was still an unknown factor, despite his instinctive trust in her. "My brother Klaus and I were born to different fathers," he began, deciding on a partial truth. "His father was a werewolf. Mine was." He paused, realizing he didn't actually know. In his memories as Harrison, Michael had always been his father. But if he truly was Harry Potter reborn, then who had sired the body he now inhabited? "His father was a mystery," Rebekah interjected smoothly. "Our mother never spoke of him, but he must have had magic in his bloodline. When our mother turned us into vampires," Harrison continued, "Klaus's werewolf side was bound by a powerful curse. Mine adapted. I became something unique, vampire, werewolf, and witch in one body." "A Tribrid," Caroline said, remembering the term Isabel had used. "But if you've had these abilities all along, why is Klaus only concerned about them now?" "Because they're growing stronger," Harrison admitted. "For centuries, my magic was weak, unpredictable. I could perform small feats, moving objects, sensing emotions beyond vampire abilities, minor healing. And now?" Caroline leaned forward, genuinely interested. "Now I can do this." Harrison raised his hand toward the lantern. With a whispered word, Wingardium Leviosa, the lantern rose into the air, hovering at eye level before gently returning to its place. Caroline's eyes widened. "Okay, that's wow. And Klaus knows about this?" "He suspects," Rebekah answered. "Our brother has always kept tabs on us, even when we believed ourselves free of him." "Which brings us to your question about Elena," Harrison said, returning to the original topic. "I intend to stop the sacrifice without killing Klaus." Caroline frowned. "How?" "The ritual requires the doppelganger's death." "Not necessarily." Harrison leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. "There may be a way to substitute another element, or to allow Elena to survive the ritual itself." "You mean like a resurrection spell?" Caroline asked skeptically. "Something like that," Harrison replied, though in truth he wasn't sure. The knowledge was there, tantalizing at the edges of his consciousness, fragments from Harry Potter's memories of magic that operated differently from what he'd known as a Mikaelson. "And why should I believe you?" Caroline challenged. "Why would you help Elena when breaking the curse would benefit your brother, your family?" Harrison met her gaze steadily. "Because some prices are too high. Because innocent lives shouldn't be sacrificed for power." The conviction in his voice surprised even him. It came from somewhere deep, from the part of him that had once faced death in a forbidden forest. Caroline studied him for a long moment. "Okay," she finally said. "I believe you want to help. But I still don't understand why you need me." "Information," Rebekah supplied. "Access to Elena and the Salvatores without revealing our presence." "And protection," Harrison added. At Caroline's confused look, he elaborated. "Not for us, for you and your friends. If Klaus discovers I'm interfering with the sacrifice, he'll target anyone associated with me. But if he doesn't know we're working together..." Caroline nodded slowly, understanding. "We become your secret weapon." "Precisely." Caroline was silent for a moment, clearly weighing her options. "What exactly do you need me to do?" Relief washed through Harrison. "For now, information. We need to know the Salvatore's plans, any preparations they're making, any other allies they might have." "Bonnie," Caroline said immediately. My friend Bonnie Bennett. She's a witch, a powerful one. She's been practicing like crazy since we found out about Klaus. Harrison exchanged a meaningful look with Rebekah. A Bennett witch. Interesting. Why? Do you know her family? The Bennett bloodline is ancient and powerful, Harrison explained. Their magic might indeed be useful against Klaus. Though not alone, he added silently. No single witch, no matter how talented, could stand against his brother. There's something else. Caroline hesitated. Elena has this deal with Elijah. Harrison stiffened. Elijah? He's in Mystic Falls? Was. Caroline corrected. Damon daggered him. He's currently stored in the Salvatore basement. Rebekah hissed, her eyes flashing with anger. They daggered our brother? Your brother tried to use Elena as bait for Klaus. Caroline shot back. So maybe hold the moral outrage. Harrison placed a restraining hand on Rebekah's arm. What was this deal? He asked Caroline. Elijah promised to protect Elena's friends and family from Klaus. In return, she would help him kill Klaus after the sacrifice. After? Harrison repeated. So Elijah was willing to let the sacrifice happen? Caroline nodded grimly. He said it was the only way to draw Klaus out. Harrison turned away, processing this information. Elijah, the moral one, the honorable brother, willing to sacrifice an innocent girl to further his vendetta against Klaus. How times changed. We need to see him, he decided. What? No. Caroline stood abruptly. If we undagger Elijah, he'll kill Damon and Stefan for what they did to him. He won't if I'm there, Harrison assured her. Elijah respects family bonds, and he owes me a debt from long ago. Caroline still looked unconvinced. Even if I wanted to help you with this, which I don't, how exactly would we get past the Salvatores to undagger him? Leave that to me, Rebekah said with a predatory smile. Distracting handsome young vampires is something of a specialty of mine. Harrison shot his sister a warning look. We don't need complications, Becca. She pouted. You're no fun anymore. Fine, we'll do it the boring way. Which is? Caroline prompted. We wait until they're out, then we enter, retrieve our brother, and leave. Harrison made it sound simple, though he knew it wouldn't be. The Salvatore brothers weren't fools, and they would have protections in place. And where do I fit into this plan? Caroline asked. You tell us when the house will be empty, Harrison replied. And you keep Elena away, for her own safety. Caroline bit her lip, clearly torn. If I do this, if I help you get to Elijah, you have to promise me something. Name it, Harrison said, perhaps too quickly. No one gets hurt. Not Elena, not Bonnie, not the Salvatores. No one. Harrison hesitated. It was a promise he wasn't certain he could keep, especially if Klaus arrived before they were prepared. But the determination in Caroline's eyes told him she wouldn't budge on this point. I promise to do everything in my power to protect your friends, he said carefully. Caroline noticed the qualification but seemed to accept it. Okay. There's a fundraiser tomorrow night at the Lockwood Mansion. Everyone will be there, including Damon and Stefan. The boarding house should be empty from about 8 until midnight. Perfect, Rebekah said. A simple extraction, and then we can focus on stopping Nick. Harrison nodded, though he doubted anything involving his family could ever be described as simple. He turned to Caroline. Thank you for trusting us with this. I don't trust you, she replied bluntly. Either of you. But I'm out of options, and if you can help save Elena. She shrugged. I'll take the risk. Her honesty was refreshing after centuries of politics and deceit among vampires. Harrison found himself smiling despite the gravity of their situation. Wise policy, he told her. Trust should be earned, not given. Speaking of trust, Caroline said, glancing at her watch, I should go before Damon realizes I tricked him. He's not exactly known for his forgiving nature. Harrison nodded. Tomorrow night, then? Tomorrow night. Caroline confirmed, then hesitated. One more thing. That spell you did with the lantern, the words you used weren't Latin or any language I've heard witches use before. Harrison stiffened almost imperceptibly. An old language? From before our time. Caroline clearly didn't believe him but chose not to press. With a final nod to both originals, she turned and left the cellar, her vampire speed carrying her swiftly away through the forest. When her footsteps had faded beyond even their enhanced hearing, Rebekah turned to her brother. You like her? Harrison didn't bother denying it. She's brave. Loyal. Smarter than she lets on. And pretty, Rebekah added with a sly smile. That's irrelevant. Is it? Rebekah stepped closer, her expression turning serious. Brother, I know that look. You had it with Anastasia in Russia, with Josephine in New Orleans, with, I'm aware of my own history, Becca. Harrison interrupted. And Caroline Forbes is not going to become part of it. She's a means to an end, nothing more. Rebekah studied him for a moment longer, then sighed. Whatever you say. Now, about tomorrow night's little prison break. As they discussed strategy for retrieving Elijah, Harrison tried to focus, but part of his mind remained fixed on Caroline Forbes. There was something about her that called to him, something beyond her beauty or courage. Something familiar, like a melody heard long ago. In his fragmentary memories as Harry Potter, there had been a girl with similar qualities, brave, loyal, fierce. But try as he might, Harrison couldn't bring her face into focus, couldn't remember her name. Just another missing piece in the puzzle of his dual existence. With an effort, he pushed those thoughts aside. Tomorrow night, they would retrieve Elijah. And after that, they would face Klaus. Everything else, his growing powers, his past life, his inexplicable connection to a baby vampire, would have to wait. But as Harrison followed Rebekah out of the cellar, and into the night, a voice in the back of his mind whispered that some things couldn't be postponed indefinitely. Sooner or later, Harrison, Mikaelson, and Harry Potter would have to reconcile. And when that happened, nothing would ever be the same. Caroline paced the length of her bedroom, phone clutched in her hand. The screen showed 5 missed calls from Elena, 3 from Bonnie, and 1 from Stefan. She'd been avoiding them all day, making excuses about sheriff's daughter duties and college applications. Lies. So many lies. And now she was preparing to help 2 original vampires break into the Salvatore boarding house to undagger their brother, the same brother who had tried to use Elena as bait. What am I doing? She muttered, running a hand through her blonde hair. Her laptop pinged with an incoming video call. Bonnie. With a sigh, Caroline accepted the call, plastering on her best everything's fine smile. Hey, Bon! Bonnie Bennett's face filled the screen, her expression concerned. Caroline, where have you been? We've been trying to reach you all day. Sorry, my mom had me helping with security plans for the fundraiser tomorrow. The lie came easily, which only made Caroline feel worse. Are you okay? You look stressed. I'm fine. Caroline insisted. Just tired. What's up? I found something in my grimoires about the sacrifice ritual. Bonnie replied, her voice dropping to a whisper though she was alone in her bedroom. A way to possibly save Elena. Caroline's heart skipped. Really? What is it? It's complicated, but basically if I channel enough power, I might be able to temporarily stop Elena's heart during the ritual, then revive her afterward. Klaus would think she's dead, the curse would break, but Elena would survive. That actually sounds like it might work, Caroline said, genuinely surprised. It was similar to what Harrison had suggested might be possible. But Bonnie, channeling that much power, wouldn't it be dangerous for you? Bonnie's expression turned resolute. I can handle it. And I'd do anything to save Elena. Caroline felt a pang of guilt. Here was Bonnie, willing to risk her life through dangerous magic, while Caroline was secretly conspiring with the very family that had created the problem in the first place. Have you told Elena about this plan? She asked. Not yet. I wanted to be sure it was viable first. Bonnie leaned closer to the camera. Caroline, what's really going on with you? You've been acting strange ever since you ran into those vampires in the woods. Nothing's going on, Caroline said too quickly. I'm just worried about Elena, like everyone else. Bonnie clearly didn't believe her but chose not to press. Well, don't forget about the fundraiser tomorrow night. Elena needs all of us there, show of strength and normalcy. Right, the fundraiser. Caroline nodded. Of course I'll be there. After ending the call, Caroline threw her phone onto the bed with a groan. Another lie. She wouldn't be at the fundraiser. She'd be making sure Harrison and Rebekah could get to Elijah without being discovered. She moved to her window, staring out at the night. What if she was wrong about Harrison? What if this was all an elaborate trap? The originals weren't exactly known for their honesty or compassion. But the image of Harrison in the forest, standing protectively in front of her while facing down Isabel and her vampires, wouldn't leave her mind. The conviction in his voice when he said innocent lives shouldn't be sacrificed for power. The way his green eyes had flashed was something that looked like memory when he said he knew what it was like to be marked for sacrifice. There was more to Harrison Mikaelson than the typical original arrogance and bloodlust. Much more. And Caroline Forbes had always been too curious for her own good. Her phone buzzed with a text message. Grabbing it from the bed, she saw it was from an unknown number. Be careful tomorrow night. Klaus has eyes everywhere. H. Harrison. Caroline quickly saved the number, then deleted the message. She typed a response. How did you get my number? The reply came almost immediately. I have my ways. Be at the boarding house at 7:30. Come alone. Caroline hesitated, then typed, I'll be there. She set the phone down, a strange mix of anticipation and dread churning in her stomach. Tomorrow night, she would cross a line. She would actively help the originals behind her friends' backs. For Elena's sake, she told herself. To save Elena. But a small, honest part of her acknowledged another motivation. The enigmatic Harrison Mikaelson and the mysteries surrounding him. The magic he shouldn't be able to do. The memories he seemed to be recovering. The sadness that sometimes shadowed his green eyes when he thought no one was watching. What am I getting myself into? Caroline whispered to the empty room. No answer came, but somehow she knew there would be no turning back after tomorrow night. For better or worse, her fate was now entangled with the originals. With him. The Salvatore boarding house stood dark and silent against the night sky, its Gothic architecture menacing in the shadows. Harrison observed it from the tree line, his enhanced vision detecting no movement inside. Still, he remained cautious. The Salvatore brothers had survived for over a century and a half. They wouldn't leave their home unprotected, especially with a daggered original in the basement. See anything? Rebekah whispered beside him, unnecessarily given their vampire hearing. No movement, Harrison replied. But there will be traps. Vervain? Rebekah suggested. Alarm systems? Likely both. And possibly a witch's boundary spell. Harrison focused, extending his senses beyond the physical. There, a faint shimmer around the perimeter of the house, barely perceptible even to his enhanced vision. Yes, there's a barrier. Rebekah cursed softly. Bennett magic, no doubt. How do we get past that? Harrison considered, the fragments of Harry Potter's magical knowledge stirring in his mind. I might be able to create a temporary opening, but I'll need to get closer. And risk being seen? Rebekah shook her head. We should wait for your pet vampire. She'll have access. Harrison ignored the jab about Caroline. She should be here soon. The fundraiser started 30 minutes ago. As if on cue, the sound of a car approaching reached their ears. Moments later, Caroline's blue Ford pulled up to the boarding house. She emerged looking nervous, glancing around as if expecting to be ambushed. She came alone, Harrison noted with approval. Did you doubt she would? Rebekah asked. Harrison didn't answer, instead stepping out from the tree line and approaching Caroline at human speed to avoid startling her. Still, she jumped when she noticed him, one hand flying to her heart. Don't do that! She hissed. Normal people announce themselves. I'm not normal people, Harrison reminded her with a slight smile. And neither are you. Caroline rolled her eyes. Whatever. Are we doing this or not? Rebekah appeared beside them, making Caroline jump again. Jumpy little thing, isn't she? There's a boundary spell around the house, Harrison told Caroline, ignoring his sister's taunt. Can you enter? I should be able to. I've been invited in before. Caroline frowned. But they might have revoked it somehow, considering everything that's happened. Only one way to find out, Rebekah said impatiently. Try the door. Caroline hesitated, then approached the front entrance. She reached for the handle, her hand passing through the barrier Harrison had detected without resistance. I can get in. But what about you two? Once you're inside, find the source of the boundary spell and disable it, Harrison instructed. It's likely an object imbued with Bennett magic. How am I supposed to recognize that? Caroline demanded. You'll feel it, Harrison assured her. Trust your vampire senses. Objects containing active magic give off a distinct hum. Caroline looked dubious but nodded. And once I find it? Bring it outside the barrier. That should create an opening for us. Okay. Caroline took a deep breath, then turned the handle and stepped inside the boarding house. No alarms sounded, no traps sprung. She glanced back at the originals waiting in the shadows. I'll be quick. Harrison watched her disappear into the darkened house, a strange tension gripping him. Sending Caroline in alone felt wrong, dangerous, a feeling that came from both Harrison's protective instincts toward a younger vampire and from somewhere deeper, some part of Harry Potter that rebelled against asking others to take risks he wouldn't take himself. She'll be fine, Rebekah said, interpreting his silence correctly. Baby vampire or not, she's resourceful. I know, Harrison replied. He broke off as the distinct sound of breaking glass came from inside the house, followed by a muffled cry of pain. Without thinking, Harrison surged forward, only to be stopped by the invisible barrier. Pain lanced through him as the spell repelled his vampire nature. Caroline! He called loud enough to be heard inside but not enough to carry to neighbors. No response came. Harrison pressed his hands against the barrier, feeling it resist. The magic was strong, ancient family magic, passed down through generations of Bennett witches. We need to get in there, he growled, his eyes flashing yellow with his werewolf nature. How? Neither of us has been invited, and the barrier spell. Harrison cut Rebekah off, closing his eyes to concentrate. The memories were there, fragments of knowledge from a life as Harry Potter. Spells to break enchantments, to create openings and magical defenses. Finite incantatum, he whispered, pressing his palm flat against the barrier. Nothing happened. Harrison, we need another plan, Rebekah urged. He ignored her, digging deeper into the fractured memories. There had to be something, a more powerful counterspell, a way to temporarily disrupt the magic. Another sound from inside, footsteps, moving quickly. Then Caroline's voice, tight with pain. I'm okay. I found it. Moments later, Caroline appeared at the door, her right arm bleeding from a nasty cut. In her left hand, she clutched a small object, a leather pouch adorned with symbols Harrison recognized as Bennett family markings. Throw it away from the house, he instructed. Caroline complied, tossing the pouch onto the lawn. Immediately, Harrison felt the barrier dissolve, its magic disrupted by the removal of its anchor. He was beside Caroline in an instant, examining her wounded arm. What happened? He demanded. Booby trap. She winced. A wire connected to some vervain-laced glass shards. Damon style. Harrison took her arm gently, turning it to examine the wound. The vervain was preventing it from healing at vampire speed. Without thinking, he placed his hand over the injury and whispered, Episky. A warm glow emanated from his palm, and Caroline gasped as the cut sealed itself, the vervain neutralized by his magic. How did you? She began. Later. Harrison cut her off, nodding to Rebekah, who had joined them at the entrance. "Where's Elijah?" "Basement," Caroline replied, still staring at her healed arm in wonder. "This way." She led them through the darkened house to a heavy wooden door. "Down there. I'll keep watch upstairs." Harrison nodded his thanks, then descended the stairs with Rebekah close behind. The basement was dimly lit by a single bulb, its shadows concealing various antiques and forgotten furniture. In the center of the main room stood a coffin, simple, unadorned, but unmistakably containing an original vampire. "Elijah," Rebekah whispered, moving to the coffin and lifting its lid. Their elder brother lay inside, his skin gray and veined with death, the silver dagger protruding from his chest. He wore the same immaculate suit Harrison remembered from their last meeting nearly 50 years ago. "Should we remove it here?" Rebekah asked, her hand hovering over the dagger. Harrison considered. Elijah would be disoriented upon awakening, and potentially volatile. "No. We take the coffin. He can awaken once we're safely away." Rebekah nodded, closing the lid. Together, they lifted the coffin, light for their vampire strength, and carried it up the stairs. Caroline met them in the foyer, her expression anxious. "Hurry," she urged. "I just got a text from Bonnie. The fundraiser's ending early because of rain. They'll be back soon." Harrison glanced out the window. Indeed, storm clouds had gathered, obscuring the moon. A coincidence, or something more? In his experience, magic often manifested in subtle environmental changes. "Let's go," he said. They moved swiftly through the front door, Caroline pausing only to replace the boundary spell pouch where she'd found it. The coffin fit in the back of Harrison's SUV, parked a discreet distance from the boarding house. "I should stay," Caroline said as they prepared to leave. "If I disappear the same night Elijah goes missing." "Good thinking," Harrison agreed. "Go back to the fundraiser. If anyone asks, you left to check on your mother?" Caroline nodded. "What will you do with him?" She gestured toward the coffin. "Take him somewhere safe," Harrison replied. "Then remove the dagger." "And then?" Harrison met her gaze steadily. "Then we talk. Brother to brother." Caroline bit her lip, clearly conflicted. What if he still wants to go through with the sacrifice? What if he tries to use Elena as bait again? "He won't," Harrison assured her, with more confidence than he felt. "Not once he understands the full situation." "Which is?" Harrison hesitated. "That there might be another way. A way that doesn't require Elena's death." Caroline studied his face, searching for deception. Finding none, she nodded. "I'll meet you tomorrow." "Same place as before?" "Yes." "Midnight." Harrison reached out, squeezing her hand briefly. "Thank you, Caroline." The touch sent an unexpected jolt through him, not unpleasant, but startling in its intensity. Caroline's eyes widened slightly, suggesting she'd felt it too. She withdrew her hand quickly, taking a step back. "Just don't make me regret this," she said, then turned and walked to her car without looking back. Harrison watched her drive away, aware of Rebekah's speculative gaze. "Not a word," he warned his sister. "I didn't say anything," she replied innocently, though her smirk said plenty. They drove in silence to Harrison's cabin, the coffin a somber presence in the back of the vehicle. Rain began to fall as they arrived, fat droplets that quickly turned to sheets of water cascading from the darkened sky. Together, they carried Elijah's coffin inside, placing it in the center of the living room. Harrison stared down at it, a strange reluctance gripping him. Elijah was the most reasonable of his siblings, the most honorable. But he was also the most dedicated to killing Klaus. "Well?" Rebekah prompted. "Are you going to wake him or just stare at him all night?" Harrison sighed, then opened the lid. Elijah lay unchanged, a gray statue of the brother he had once been. Harrison grasped the dagger, hesitated one last moment, then pulled it free in a single smooth motion. Now they waited. Caroline arrived at the Lockwood mansion just as guests were hurrying to their cars, the unexpected downpour having cut the fundraiser short. She spotted Elena and Bonnie under the portico, sharing an umbrella as they prepared to leave. "Caroline!" Elena called, waving her over. "Where have you been? We were worried." "Sorry." Caroline forced a smile, shaking rain from her hair as she joined them. "I had to check on my mom. Sheriff stuff, you know?" Bonnie frowned. "Your mom's right over there, talking to Carol Lockwood." Caroline's heart sank as she turned to see her mother indeed engaged in conversation with the mayor's widow. "Right, she, just got back too. We were both checking on a situation at the station." Elena and Bonnie exchanged a look that clearly said they didn't believe her. "Caroline, what's going on?" Elena asked gently. "You've been acting strange for days. If something's wrong, you can tell us." The concern in her friend's voice made Caroline's guilt spike. Here was Elena, facing a death sentence from Klaus, still worried about Caroline's odd behavior. It would be so easy to confess everything, about meeting Harrison and Rebekah, about their plan to save her, about Elijah. But Harrison's warning echoed in her mind. Knowledge was power, and in the wrong hands, it could be deadly. Until they knew exactly what they were dealing with, the fewer people who knew about Harrison's involvement, the better. "I'm just stressed," Caroline said instead. "With everything happening, Klaus, the sacrifice, I haven't been sleeping well." It wasn't entirely a lie, which made it easier to sell. Elena's expression softened. "None of us have," she acknowledged. "But we'll get through this together. That's what friends do." The guilt intensified, churning in Caroline's stomach. "Right. Together. There you are, Blondie." Damon Salvatore approached, his usual smirk in place though his eyes were sharp with suspicion. "Missing the party to check on Mommy dearest?" "Some of us care about our family's safety," Caroline retorted, falling back on her usual banter with Damon to hide her nervousness. Damon's gaze was too knowing, too assessing. "Funny coincidence. I got called away on a wild goose chase tonight too. Almost like someone wanted me out of the way." Caroline's heart rate spiked, but she kept her expression neutral. "Not everything revolves around you, Damon." "No," he agreed, leaning closer. "But when it comes to Klaus and keeping Elena safe, I get a little paranoid about coincidences." "Stop interrogating Caroline," Elena interjected, stepping between them. "We're all on edge, but turning on each other isn't going to help." Damon backed off, though his suspicious gaze lingered on Caroline for a moment longer. "Fine. But this conversation isn't over, Barbie." "Looking forward to it," Caroline replied with false sweetness. As the group dispersed to their respective vehicles, Caroline felt her phone vibrate in her pocket. A text from Harrison: "Elijah is secure. Be careful around Damon. He suspects something." Caroline deleted the message immediately, glancing around to make sure no one had noticed. The rain had intensified, drumming on the roof of her car as she climbed inside. Through the windshield, she could see Damon watching her from the Lockwood portico, his expression unreadable in the distance. A shiver ran down her spine that had nothing to do with her wet clothes. Damon Salvatore was many things, but stupid wasn't one of them. If he suspected she was hiding something, he wouldn't stop until he uncovered the truth. And then what would happen? Would he try to dagger Harrison and Rebekah as he had Elijah? Would he expose their plan to Elena, potentially ruining their best chance to save her? As Caroline drove home through the storm, her thoughts churned like the black clouds overhead. She had chosen her path now, cast her lot with the originals, at least temporarily. All she could do was hope she hadn't made a terrible mistake. Color returned to Elijah's face slowly, the gray death pallor receding as the dagger's effects wore off. Harrison and Rebekah stood watching, both tense and ready for any reaction. Their elder brother had never appreciated being daggered, and his awakening was rarely peaceful. The first sign of consciousness was a slight furrow of Elijah's brow. Then his fingers twitched, and finally, his eyes snapped open, dark, ancient, and immediately alert. In a blur of movement too fast for human eyes to track, Elijah was out of the coffin and had Harrison pinned against the wall, one hand around his throat. "Brother," Elijah greeted, his voice hoarse from disuse. What an unexpected reunion! Harrison remained calm, making no move to break the hold. Hello, Elijah. It's been a while. 50 years, if I recall correctly. Elijah's grip tightened slightly. Warsaw, 1976. You said you were done with family drama. Circumstances change, Harrison replied evenly. Elijah's gaze shifted to Rebekah, who stood watching with her arms crossed. Sister, I see you've allied yourself with our wayward brother. Don't be dramatic, Elijah. Rebekah sighed. We rescued you from the Salvatores. A little gratitude wouldn't go amiss. Elijah released Harrison and stepped back, straightening his suit jacket with practiced precision. Rescued? Or interfered with my plans? Your plan to use Elena Gilbert as bait? Harrison challenged, rubbing his throat. Yes, we interfered with that. Elijah's expression hardened. You don't understand what's at stake. Klaus, Harrison said simply. It's always about Klaus with you, isn't it? Our brother has eluded justice for too long. Elijah replied. The doppelganger is the key to drawing him out, to making him vulnerable. And her death is acceptable collateral damage? Harrison shook his head. I expected better from you, Elijah. What I find curious, Elijah countered, is your sudden interest in the fate of a human girl you've never met. Unless. His eyes narrowed. You've met her. You've been in Mystic Falls all along. Harrison exchanged a glance with Rebekah. Not all along. But yes, I've been watching events unfold. Why? Elijah demanded. You've avoided Klaus for centuries, avoided all of us. Why show interest now? Harrison hesitated. How much should he reveal? Elijah was observant, always had been. He would notice the changes in Harrison, the growing magic, the recovered memories. Because things are changing, he finally said. I'm changing. Elijah's expression turned wary. Explain. Perhaps you should sit down, Rebekah suggested. It's rather a long story. Elijah remained standing, his posture rigid. I'll stand, thank you. Now, explain what you mean by changing. Harrison sighed, then raised his hand toward the fireplace. With a whispered incendio, flames roared to life among the logs. Elijah's composed facade cracked, shock registering briefly before he controlled it. That's impossible. Vampires cannot perform magic. Apparently I can, Harrison replied. And it's getting stronger. How long? Elijah asked, his voice tight. Centuries, Harrison admitted. Small abilities at first, moving objects, sensing beyond normal vampire abilities. But recently, especially since coming to Mystic Falls, it's accelerated. And there's more, Rebekah added, ignoring Harrison's warning look. Tell him, Harrison. He deserves to know everything if we expect his help. Elijah looked between them. What else are you hiding, brother? Harrison moved to the window, watching rain lash against the glass. I've been having memories. Dreams. Of another life, another existence. Hallucinations, Elijah suggested. The magic is affecting your mind. No. Harrison turned back to face his brother. They're too consistent, too detailed to be hallucinations. They feel real, Elijah. Like memories I've forgotten and am now remembering. Memories of what? Of being someone named Harry Potter, Harrison replied quietly. A wizard who sacrificed himself to save others. Silence fell in the cabin, broken only by the crackling of magical flames in the fireplace. Elijah's expression was unreadable, his centuries of diplomatic experience serving him well. You believe, he finally said, that you are the reincarnation of this Harry Potter? I don't know what I believe, Harrison admitted. All I know is that these memories coincide with my growing magical abilities. And both seem connected to Mystic Falls, to the doppelganger, to Klaus's arrival. Elijah paced the room, processing this information. And this is why you wish to prevent the sacrifice? Because of these memories? Partly, Harrison acknowledged. But also because I believe there might be another way to break Klaus's curse without killing Elena Gilbert. That caught Elijah's attention. What way? In my memories, there were spells, magic that operated differently from what we know. Magic that could cheat death itself under the right circumstances. Resurrection spells exist in witch lore, Elijah pointed out. But they require tremendous power and always come with a price. I'm aware, Harrison said. But what if the price has already been paid? What if my existence, this merging of Harrison Mikaelson and Harry Potter, is itself the result of such magic? Elijah stared at him. You think your condition is connected to the doppelganger curse? I think nothing in our world happens by coincidence, Harrison replied. Especially not when it comes to magic as old and powerful as that which created the originals. Elijah was silent for a long moment, his mind clearly working through the implications. Even if what you say is true, Klaus won't abandon the sacrifice willingly. He's waited 1,000 years to break his curse. Then we don't tell him, Rebekah interjected. We let him believe the sacrifice will proceed as planned, while secretly ensuring Elena survives. Deception? Elijah raised an eyebrow. Against Klaus? Our brother is paranoid at the best of times. Which is why we need your help, Harrison said. You've earned his trust again, at least partially. He believes you're helping him acquire the doppelganger. I was helping him acquire the doppelganger, Elijah corrected. To kill him. And now you can help us save both Klaus and Elena, Harrison countered. Isn't that preferable to more family bloodshed? Elijah studied him intently. You've changed, Harrison. The brother I knew in Warsaw would never have involved himself in such matters. Perhaps I'm remembering what it means to care about something beyond survival, Harrison replied quietly. The words hung in the air between them, charged with meaning. Harrison could almost see Elijah's brilliant mind calculating, weighing options and potential outcomes. I'll need proof, Elijah finally said. Of these memories, this magic. Something beyond parlor tricks with fire. Harrison nodded, having expected this request. Tomorrow night. I'll show you something that should convince you. Very well. Elijah straightened his cuffs, ever the picture of composure despite having been daggered and revived in the span of hours. Until then, I suggest we all get some rest. If Klaus is indeed coming to Mystic Falls, we'll need our strength. As Elijah moved toward one of the spare bedrooms, he paused beside Harrison. One more thing, brother. Does Caroline Forbes know about your condition? Harrison tensed. Some of it. Why? Because she's aligned with the Salvatores, who are desperate to protect Elena Gilbert. If they learn what you can do, they'll try to use me against Klaus. Harrison finished. I'm aware of the risk. Elijah studied him a moment longer. Be careful, Harrison. Doppelgangers have a way of dividing families. And from what I gather, you're already divided enough within yourself. With that parting observation, Elijah left the room, closing the bedroom door quietly behind him. Rebekah moved to Harrison's side. Well, that went better than expected. No bloodshed, minimal furniture damage. Harrison smiled faintly. He's reserving judgment until tomorrow's demonstration. And what exactly do you plan to show him that will prove you're this Harry Potter reborn? Rebekah asked. Harrison looked down at his hands, contemplating. Something I remembered recently. Something only Harry Potter could do. Care to elaborate? Not yet. Harrison glanced at the closed door of Elijah's room. Some secrets are better kept, even from family. Rebekah rolled her eyes. More mysteries. Wonderful. She yawned dramatically. Well, while you brood about your dual identity, I'm going to get some beauty sleep. Reviving daggered brothers is exhausting work. After she too had retired to a bedroom, Harrison remained in the living room, listening to the storm rage outside. Thunder rolled across the sky, and lightning occasionally illuminated the forest surrounding the cabin. His mind wandered to Caroline, her bravery in helping them tonight, the jolt he'd felt when their hands touched, the lingering sense that he knew her somehow, from before. In his fractured memories as Harry Potter, there had been many friends, many allies. Could Caroline somehow be connected to one of them? The thought was absurd, of course. Caroline Forbes was born in this world, a normal human girl until her transformation into a vampire. She couldn't possibly have any connection to Harry Potter's world of wizards and magic. And yet, the feeling persisted, a sense of familiarity, of rightness when she was near. As if some part of his soul recognized hers across the gulf of different lifetimes. Harrison shook his head, dismissing the fanciful notion. He had more immediate concerns, convincing Elijah to help them, developing a plan to save Elena without alerting Klaus, and continuing to unravel the mystery of his own existence. As lightning flashed again, Harrison caught his reflection in the window glass. For just a moment, a fraction of a second, the face looking back at him wasn't his own. Younger, with unruly black hair and round glasses, a lightning-shaped scar prominent on his forehead. Harry Potter. The image was gone as quickly as it appeared, leaving Harrison staring at his familiar features once more. But the brief glimpse was enough to send a chill down his spine. The merging was accelerating. Soon, Harrison Mikaelson and Harry Potter might no longer be separate entities sharing a body, but something new entirely. Someone new. And Harrison wasn't sure if that prospect thrilled or terrified him. Klaus Mikaelson gazed out the window of his private jet, watching lightning illuminate the clouds below as they approached Virginia airspace. Beside him, a glass of bourbon sat untouched, the ice long since melted. "We'll be landing in 30 minutes, sir," the flight attendant informed him, careful to keep her distance. Even compelled, humans retained enough instinct to fear him. Klaus nodded dismissal without looking at her. His thoughts were focused on Mystic Falls and what awaited him there. The doppelganger. The moonstone. The final components needed to break the curse that had bound his werewolf side for a millennium. And if his intelligence was correct, his long-absent brother Harrison. "Thinking about family reunion?" a voice asked from the seat across from him. Klaus turned to regard the witch seated there, young, powerful, with ancient eyes that belied her physical appearance. "Among other things," he replied. "Your brother complicates matters," the witch observed. "Especially with his unique abilities." "Harrison has always been unique," Klaus said, a mix of affection and wariness in his tone. "Even before we turned. Not like this." The witch leaned forward. "The magic he's manifesting, it shouldn't be possible. It defies the natural laws. And yet here we are." Klaus finally reached for his bourbon, taking a measured sip. "The question is not whether it's possible, Greta. Clearly it is. The question is what it means for my plans." Greta Martin nodded, her dark eyes calculating. "I've consulted the spirits. They're agitated. They speak of a convergence, a merging of powers that was never meant to be." "Convergence of what, exactly?" "Two souls," Greta replied. "Two sets of magic. Vampire and something else. Something the spirits don't recognize." Klaus's expression remained impassive, though internally, his mind raced. Harrison had always been different, quieter, more thoughtful than his other siblings. Less prone to the bloodthirsty excesses that defined original existence. Klaus had attributed it to his unknown parentage, to whatever blood ran in his veins that wasn't Michael's. But what if it was more than that? What if Harrison's peculiarities had deeper origins? "Can you neutralize him?" Klaus asked directly. Greta hesitated, which was answer enough. "I see." Klaus set down his glass. "Then we'll need to be creative. There might be a way," Greta said carefully. "Not to neutralize his power, but to channel it. Use it as part of the ritual." Klaus's interest sharpened. "Explain." "The sacrifice ritual requires specific elements: the moonstone, the doppelganger, a vampire, a werewolf. But with additional power, specifically the power of an original Tribrid, we could potentially amplify the results." "Meaning?" Greta's eyes gleamed with ambition. "Meaning that instead of just unleashing your werewolf side, you could gain more Strength beyond what even an original hybrid should possess. Maybe even immunity to the white oak. Klaus went very still. Immunity to the only weapon that could truly kill an original was the ultimate prize, one he had sought for centuries. And Harrison would need to participate willingly in this modified ritual? He asked, already knowing the answer. No, Rebekah confirmed. But he would need to be present. And we would need his blood. Klaus nodded slowly, plans reforming in his mind. Then we'll ensure he's present. How? If what Isabel reported is true, he's actively opposing the sacrifice. A cold smile curved Klaus's lips. My brother has always had one weakness, Greta. The same weakness Elijah shares, that even Rebekah cannot overcome. Which is? Family, Klaus replied simply. For all his independent ways, Harrison Mikaelson would never stand by while his family was threatened. Not even the family member he claims to despise. Understanding dawned in Greta's eyes. You're going to use yourself as bait. In a manner of speaking. Klaus gazed back out at the storm as the plane began its descent. Harrison believes he's protecting the doppelganger from me. He doesn't realize he's the one who needs protection. Lightning flashed again, illuminating Klaus's reflection in the window. His eyes gleamed with anticipation and something else, a hint of regret, quickly suppressed. Harrison had always been his favorite, the brother who challenged him, who saw beyond his cruelty to the wounded soul beneath. But some prizes were worth any sacrifice. Even family. Prepare everything for the ritual, Klaus instructed. And add whatever modifications you need to incorporate Harrison's power. When the full moon rises, both curses will be broken, mine, and the one that has kept my true nature hidden for 1,000 years. As the plane descended toward Virginia, Klaus raised his glass in a silent toast to the storm. Soon, very soon, the Mikaelson family would be forever changed. And Klaus would finally claim the power that had been denied him for far too long. Caroline couldn't sleep. Rain pounded against her bedroom window as she tossed and turned, her mind replaying the events of the night. Breaking into the Salvatore boarding house. Finding the boundary spell. Getting injured by Damon's trap. Harrison healing her with that strange magic of his. The memory of his touch lingered on her arm where the cut had been, warm, gentle, yet charged with power unlike anything she'd experienced before. Not witch magic as she knew it from Bonnie, but something different. Something that felt almost familiar. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Grabbing it, she saw a text from an unknown number. Klaus landed in Richmond an hour ago. He'll be in Mystic Falls by morning. Be careful. Our Rebekah. Caroline sat up, suddenly fully alert. Klaus was here already? They weren't prepared. Elena wasn't protected. None of them were ready to face the original hybrid. She typed back quickly. How do you know? The response came seconds later. I have my sources. Don't do anything reckless. Wait for our signal. Caroline bit her lip, debating whether to alert Elena and the others. But what could they do tonight, in the middle of a storm? Better to wait until morning, when they could make proper plans. Another text arrived, this one from Harrison's number. Meet us at noon tomorrow. The Falls. Come alone. Caroline replied. Will Elena be safe until then? The answer took longer to arrive. Klaus won't move against her immediately. He needs to prepare for the ritual. We have time. Caroline hoped he was right. She set her phone back on the nightstand and lay down again, listening to the storm. Klaus was in Mystic Falls. The most powerful, dangerous creature in vampire history was somewhere out there in the darkness, plotting Elena's death. And Caroline's only hope of stopping him rested with 2 original vampires and their recently undaggered brother. Plus whatever mysterious magic Harrison possessed that shouldn't be possible. What a mess, she muttered to the empty room. Sleep continued to elude her. Every time she closed her eyes, images flashed behind her eyelids, Harrison's green eyes glowing with power, Rebekah's calculating gaze, Elijah in his coffin. And now Klaus, whom she'd never met but whose reputation inspired terror throughout the vampire world. Eventually, Caroline gave up on sleep altogether. She moved to her window seat, drawing her knees up to her chest as she watched the storm rage. Dawn was still hours away, but she felt as though she were waiting for something, some sign, some revelation that would make sense of everything that had happened. Her gaze drifted to her dresser, where a small stuffed wolf sat among her childhood mementos. Her father had given it to her when she was 8, a reminder, he'd said, that even fierce creatures could be gentle. She'd kept it all these years, through her parents' divorce, through her transformation into a vampire, through everything. Looking at it now, Caroline felt an odd prickling at the back of her neck. Wolves. Werewolves. Harrison was part werewolf, like Klaus. A hybrid, but with magic too. A Tribrid. And he was trying to stop a sacrifice that required a werewolf victim. A sudden thought struck her. Who would Klaus choose as the werewolf's sacrifice? There weren't many in Mystic Falls. Tyler Lockwood had triggered his curse, but he was out of town, sent away by his mother after learning the truth about his family. Unless... Caroline grabbed her phone and dialed Tyler's number. It went straight to voicemail. She tried again with the same result. Worry gnawed at her. If Klaus needed a werewolf for the sacrifice, Tyler would be an obvious target. And if he returned to Mystic Falls unaware of the danger. She sent a text, Tyler, do not come back to Mystic Falls. Danger. Call me ASAP. It wasn't much, but it was all she could do for now. Caroline returned to the window seat, her worry now compounded. Elena as the doppelganger sacrifice. Tyler potentially as the werewolf. And which vampire would Klaus choose? Someone disposable? Or someone whose death would cause maximum pain to those opposing him? The possibilities were too frightening to contemplate. Caroline forced her mind back to Harrison and his mysterious past. The way he'd spoken of sacrifice, of knowing what it felt like to be marked for death. The strange language of his spells. The flashes of memory he seemed to be experiencing. Who was Harry Potter? And how was he connected to Harrison Mikaelson, an original vampire who had walked the earth for 1,000 years? Outside, lightning split the sky one final time, and the storm began to abate. Rain softened to a gentle patter against the glass. Dawn would come soon, bringing with it Klaus Mikaelson and whatever plans he had for Elena, for all of them. Caroline could only hope that Harrison's mysterious powers would be enough to stop him. Because if not, they were all doomed. Morning arrived with unexpected brightness, the storm having cleared the air and left the world washed clean. Harrison stood at the edge of Mystic Falls, gazing down at the town from a hillside vantage point. From here, it looked peaceful, quaint buildings, church spires, people going about their daily routines unaware of the supernatural forces gathering around them. He's here, Elijah said, appearing silently beside him. I can feel it. Harrison nodded. He too had sensed the shift in the atmosphere, a pressure, a presence that only those connected to Klaus by blood could truly perceive. Yes. He'll come for the doppelganger soon, Elijah continued. Once he confirms all the other elements are in place. Then we don't have much time. Harrison turned to face his brother. Have you considered what I told you? Elijah's expression remained neutral. About your memories? Or about saving Elena Gilbert? Both. They're connected. So you believe. Elijah clasped his hands behind his back, studying the town below. I'm still waiting for this proof you promised. Harrison had spent the early morning hours searching his fragmented memories, looking for something that would convince Elijah beyond doubt. The answer had come to him just before dawn, a piece of magic so distinctive, so unique to Harry Potter, that it could not be dismissed as coincidence or delusion. Tonight, Harrison promised. After we meet with Caroline. Ah, yes, your vampire confidant. Elijah's tone betrayed nothing, but Harrison knew his brother well enough to detect the subtle judgment. Are you certain she can be trusted? Her loyalty to Elena Gilbert is well documented. Which is precisely why I trust her, Harrison replied. She wants to save her friend. Our goals align. For now, Elijah pointed out. But what happens when she learns the full extent of your condition? When she realizes what you truly are? Harrison frowned. What do you mean, what I truly am? Brother, Elijah said, his voice gentler than before. If your memories are to be believed, if you truly are this Harry Potter reborn into our family, then you are not truly a Mikaelson by blood. You never were. The observation struck Harrison with unexpected force. He had been so focused on reconciling his dual identities that he hadn't fully considered the implications for his place within the family. I've been your brother for 1,000 years, he said quietly. Does origin change that? Elijah considered this. Not to me, he finally said. But to Klaus? To our mother, should she ever return? These things matter to them. Harrison laughed bitterly. Mother has been dead for centuries, and Klaus daggered you the moment you disagreed with him. I think we're well past concerns about family purity. Perhaps. Elijah turned his gaze back to the town. Or perhaps family is the only thing that has kept us tethered to our humanity all these years. The only thing preventing us from becoming the monsters everyone believes us to be. The words resonated with something in Harrison's recovered memories. A boy who had lost his parents, who had found family among friends, who had sacrificed himself for those he loved. Family transcended blood. It always had. We should return, Harrison said after a moment. Rebekah will be wondering where we've gone. As they turned to leave, Harrison paused, his enhanced senses detecting a familiar presence approaching. Wait. Seconds later, Caroline appeared at the edge of the clearing, her vampire speed bringing her to an abrupt halt when she spotted not just Harrison but Elijah as well. Caroline. Harrison greeted her. You're early for our meeting. I couldn't wait, she replied, her gaze fixed warily on Elijah. Klaus is here. In Mystic Falls. I need to know what we're going to do. Harrison nodded. We know. We sensed his arrival. Original vampire GPS. Caroline muttered. Convenient. Elijah stepped forward, causing Caroline to tense visibly. Miss Forbes. I understand I have you to thank for my extraction from the Salvatore basement. Don't mention it, she replied. Seriously, don't. To anyone. Ever. A ghost of a smile touched Elijah's lips. Your secret is safe with me. Though I confess I'm curious about your motives. The Salvatores are your allies, are they not? Caroline lifted her chin. Elena is my friend. I'll do whatever it takes to save her. Even work with you. Admirable loyalty, Elijah observed. Let us hope it's not misplaced. Harrison intervened before Caroline could retort. We should continue this conversation at the cabin. It's safer there. Caroline hesitated. I can't. Elena and Bonnie are expecting me for a strategy meeting at the boarding house in an hour. If I don't show up, they'll get suspicious. Harrison finished for her. Very well. What do you need to know now? Everything, Caroline said emphatically. What's the plan? How are we going to save Elena? What do you need me to do? Harrison exchanged a glance with Elijah. We're still finalizing the details, he admitted. Much depends on convincing Elijah that there's another way. Caroline looked at the elder original. You're still not on board? I'm considering options, Elijah replied diplomatically. My brother's plan has certain merits that cannot be dismissed. Merits? Caroline's voice rose. It involves killing my best friend. And stopping Klaus? Elijah pointed out. Possibly permanently. The needs of the many, Miss Forbes. Don't quote Star Trek at me when we're talking about Elena's life. Caroline snapped. Then, turning to Harrison. Please tell me you have something better than philosophy and sci-fi references. Despite the gravity of the situation, Harrison found himself smiling at her indignation. We do. But it requires preparation and information. What do you know about Klaus's current whereabouts? Has he made contact with Elena or the Salvatores? Caroline shook her head. Not directly. But there's a new history teacher at school, Alaric Saltzman, who's been acting weird. Bonnie thinks Klaus might have possessed him somehow. Harrison frowned. Possession? That's not typically within a vampire's abilities, even in original. Unless he has a witch helping him. Elijah suggested. Klaus has always maintained alliances with powerful witches. Great. So we're dealing with Klaus and some super witch. Caroline threw up her hands. Any other good news? The ritual requires specific elements, Harrison said, thinking aloud. The moonstone, the doppelganger, a vampire sacrifice, and a werewolf sacrifice. If we can remove even one component. The werewolf, Caroline said suddenly. I've been trying to reach Tyler Lockwood. He triggered the curse a few months ago. But he's not answering his phone. What if Klaus already has him? Harrison considered this. It's possible. But Klaus would need to keep him alive until the full moon. Which gives us time to find him. Caroline concluded. I'll keep trying to reach him. And I'll use my contacts to locate any werewolves Klaus might have brought with him as backup options. Elijah offered. Caroline looked between them, a tentative hope in her expression. So we might actually have a chance at stopping this. We do, Harrison assured her. But we need to be careful. Klaus has spies everywhere, and if he suspects we're working together. I know. Death, destruction, general mayhem. Caroline checked her watch. I should go. I can't be late for the meeting or they'll definitely know something's up. Tonight, Harrison said. The Falls at midnight. I'll show you what I promised. Caroline nodded, then hesitated. There's something else. Bonnie has a plan to save Elena. Some spell that would temporarily kill her during the sacrifice, then bring her back. Harrison's interest sharpened. What kind of spell? I don't know the details. But it involves channeling a massive amount of power. Power that might. She trailed off. Might what? Harrison pressed. Might kill Bonnie. Caroline admitted softly. She's willing to die to save Elena. Harrison absorbed this information, fragments of his own memories as Harry Potter stirring in response. He too had been willing to die for those he loved. Had walked willingly to his death in a forest not unlike the ones surrounding Mystic Falls. Tell Bonnie to hold off on any such plan, he instructed Caroline. We may have a better option. What option? Harrison glanced at Elijah, who raised an eyebrow in silent question. Tonight, Harrison said to Caroline. I'll explain everything tonight. Caroline looked frustrated but nodded. Fine. Midnight at the Falls. She started to leave, then turned back. And Harrison? If you're playing me, if this is some elaborate Mikaelson game. It's not, Harrison promised. You have my word. She studied his face for a moment longer, then disappeared into the forest, vampire speed carrying her back toward town. Interesting young vampire, Elijah observed once she was gone. Brave, to speak to originals that way. She's special, Harrison agreed, then immediately regretted his choice of words at Elijah's knowing look. Indeed, his brother said drily. And clearly you've noticed. Harrison ignored the implication. We should return to the cabin. Rebekah will be wondering where we've been. As they moved through the forest, Harrison's thoughts turned to the night ahead. The proof he intended to show Elijah. The explanation he owed Caroline. The plan forming in his mind to save Elena Gilbert without sacrificing Bonnie Bennett. And beneath it all, the growing certainty that his existence, this merging of Harrison Mikaelson and Harry Potter, was no cosmic accident. It had purpose. Meaning. A destiny connected to Klaus, to the doppelganger, to the magic that had bound and defined the Mikaelson family for a millennium. Tonight he would take the first step toward understanding that destiny. And perhaps toward changing it forever. Klaus stood in the apartment he'd acquired in Mystic Falls, gazing at the collection of artifacts arranged on the table before him. The moonstone, gleaming white in its raw form. A vial of doppelganger blood, procured by his witch Greta from Elena Gilbert's hairbrush. A silver dagger, similar to those that could neutralize an original, but modified for the ritual's purposes. And a small wooden box, ancient and inscribed with symbols few living beings could decipher. Everything is in place, Greta reported from the doorway. The werewolf has been secured, and I've identified potential vampire sacrifices. Klaus nodded, not looking away from the artifacts. And my brother? Still at his cabin outside town, Greta replied. With Elijah and Rebekah. That gave Klaus pause. Elijah? He's been undaggered? Last night. Harrison and Rebekah retrieved him from the Salvatore boarding house. A cold smile curved Klaus's lips. Interesting. My siblings, reuniting just in time for my arrival. How very touching. Should we be concerned? Greta asked. 3 originals working together could pose a threat to our plans. On the contrary, Klaus replied, finally turning to face her. It simplifies matters considerably. Now I know exactly where to find them all. He moved to the window, looking out at Mystic Falls. Somewhere out there, his long-estranged brother was plotting against him, unaware of the true nature of Klaus's plans. Unaware of the ancient knowledge Klaus had acquired during his centuries of searching. Knowledge about what Harrison truly was. Prepare the witch house location for the ritual, Klaus instructed. And make the modifications we discussed. Greta nodded. And the Bennett witch? She's powerful, potentially a problem. Let her believe her magic can save the doppelganger, Klaus said dismissively. By the time she realizes the truth, it will be too late. As Greta left to carry out his instructions, Klaus returned his attention to the wooden box on the table. Carefully, he opened it, revealing its contents, a wand, ancient and powerful, crafted from wood that had never grown in this world. The wand had come to him through a sequence of events so unlikely they could only be described as fate. A witch in Prague, dying of plague in 1623, had pressed it into his hands with her last breath, whispering that it sought a master who had cheated death. For centuries, the wand had remained inert in Klaus's possession, nothing more than a curious relic. Until recently, when it had begun to emit a faint magical signature whenever Harrison was nearby. Klaus lifted the wand, feeling its subtle vibration, a resonance with power not of this world. Harrison's power. Soon, brother, he murmured. Soon we'll discover what you truly are. What we truly are. He replaced the wand in its box and closed the lid. The full moon was 3 nights away. 3 nights until the ritual that would break his curse and reveal the truth about Harrison Mikaelson. 3 nights until everything changed. The falls roared in the distance, the sound of cascading water a constant backdrop as Caroline waited at the designated meeting spot. Midnight had come and gone, and still no sign of Harrison or his siblings. She checked her phone again, no messages, no missed calls. The strategy meeting with Elena and the others had run long, with Bonnie revealing more details about her plan to temporarily kill Elena during the ritual. A plan that would likely claim Bonnie's own life in the process. Caroline had argued against it, more vehemently than she normally would have, earning curious looks from everyone. But she couldn't tell them about Harrison's alternative, couldn't explain why she was so certain there was another way. More lies. More secrets kept from her closest friends. A twig snapped nearby, and Caroline spun around, instantly on alert. Harrison? No response came, but her vampire senses detected movement in the trees. She tensed, ready to flee if necessary. Hello, Caroline. The voice came from behind her, unfamiliar, British accented, casually menacing. Caroline turned slowly to find herself facing a man she'd never seen before but instantly recognized from descriptions. Handsome, with short blonde hair and blue eyes that gleamed with predatory intelligence. An air of absolute confidence, of power held in perfect control. And a smile that promised both charm and cruelty in equal measure. Klaus Mikaelson. You're not who I was expecting, Caroline said, proud that her voice remained steady despite her terror. No, I imagine you were hoping for my brother. Klaus circled her slowly, studying her like a specimen under glass. Harrison has always had excellent taste in allies. Caroline held her ground, though every instinct screamed at her to run. I don't know what you're talking about. Come now, sweetheart. Let's not begin our acquaintance with lies. Klaus stopped directly in front of her. I know you've been meeting with my siblings. I know you helped free Elijah from the Salvatores. I know everything. Caroline's mind raced. If Klaus knew about her involvement, then Harrison and the others might already be captured, or worse. If you're going to kill me, just get it over with. Klaus looked genuinely offended. Kill you? Why would I do that when you're exactly what I need? Before Caroline could process his words, pain exploded in her neck, a needle, injecting something that burned through her veins like fire. She tried to vamp speed away, but her limbs wouldn't respond. Darkness crowded the edges of her vision. The last thing she saw was Klaus's satisfied smile as he caught her collapsing form. Perfect timing, he said to someone beyond her field of vision. Tell my brother I have something he might want to retrieve. Then darkness claimed her completely. Harrison arrived at the falls with Elijah and Rebekah, immediately sensing something wrong. The clearing where they were supposed to meet Caroline was empty, but traces of her scent lingered in the air, along with another, horrifyingly familiar scent. Klaus, Rebekah whispered, having detected the same thing. Harrison moved to the center of the clearing, his enhanced senses searching for any clue to what had happened. There, a small object glinted in the moonlight. He picked it up, Caroline's phone, the screen cracked but still functioning. A text message was open, sent from an unknown number just an hour ago. Change of plans. Meet me at the falls immediately. Urgent news about Klaus. H. Harrison's blood ran cold. He used me to lure her here. A classic Klaus tactic, Elijah observed. Using those we care about as leverage. Harrison gripped the phone so tightly the screen shattered completely. We need to find her. Now. And we will, Rebekah assured him, placing a hand on his arm. But we need to be smart about this. Klaus took her for a reason. As bait. Harrison growled, his eyes flashing yellow with his werewolf nature. He knows I've been interfering with his plans. Perhaps, Elijah said thoughtfully. But why Caroline specifically? Klaus could have taken Elena Gilbert if he merely wanted leverage over the Mystic Falls group. Harrison went still, realization dawning. Because he knows. Knows what? Rebekah asked. About me. About the magic. About. Harrison trailed off, unwilling to complete the thought even now. About Harry Potter. Elijah finished for him. You believe Klaus knows about your dual nature? I think he suspects something. Harrison replied. And he's using Caroline to draw me out, to confirm his suspicions. Rebekah shook her head in confusion. But how would he know? We've only just learned about it ourselves. Klaus has resources, contacts in the witch community that span continents. Elijah pointed out. If there were whispers, prophecies about Harrison's condition, then he would have heard them. Harrison concluded grimly. And now he has Caroline. He closed his eyes, forcing himself to think past the rage and fear. Where would Klaus take her? Not somewhere obvious like his apartment in town. Somewhere symbolic, significant to the ritual perhaps. The witch house, Harrison said suddenly, opening his eyes. The old Bennett witch burial ground. It's where he'll perform the ritual during the full moon. How can you be sure? Rebekah asked. Because it's where I would go. Harrison replied. The convergence of ley lines, the residual magic from generations of Bennett witches, it's the perfect location to perform a ritual as powerful as breaking the hybrid curse. Elijah nodded. It's consistent with Klaus's methods. He appreciates symmetry, symbolism. Then let's go. Rebekah said, already turning toward the forest. Wait. Harrison grabbed her arm. We can't just charge in. Klaus will be expecting that. He'll have traps, contingencies. So what's your plan? She demanded. Leave Caroline in his hands while we strategize? No. Harrison's expression hardened. You two will create a diversion, approach from the east, make yourselves known. Klaus will expect us to come together. And what will you be doing? Elijah asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. I'll come from the west, Harrison replied. Alone. Using magic he won't be able to detect until it's too late. Rebekah looked skeptical. That's your big plan? Split up and hope for the best? It's not hope, Harrison corrected. It's calculated risk. Klaus wants to confirm what I am, what I can do. So I'll show him. Brother, Elijah said carefully. The proof you promised me, the magic unique to Harry Potter. Is that what you intend to use against Klaus? Harrison nodded. It's time to stop hiding from what I am. From who I am. The declaration hung in the air between them, charged with significance. For centuries, Harrison had struggled with his dual nature, his fragmented memories, his inexplicable abilities. Now, with Caroline in danger, with Klaus on the verge of breaking his curse, there was no more time for doubt. Very well, Elijah finally said. We'll create your diversion. But Harrison, be careful. Klaus has had centuries to plan for this moment. Whatever he knows about your condition, he'll have countermeasures. I'm counting on it, Harrison replied cryptically. As they moved through the forest toward the witch house, Harrison felt a strange calm settle over him. The fragmentary memories of Harry Potter seemed closer than ever, more accessible. Spells and incantations he had never consciously learned rose to the surface of his mind, ready for use. And with them came something else, a power he had felt only in his dreams until now. A connection to something beyond the magic of this world, beyond the supernatural forces that had shaped his existence as Harrison Mikaelson. The Deathly Hallows. The power of one who had mastered death itself. It was time to remember. Time to become what he was always meant to be, not just Harrison Mikaelson or Harry Potter, but something new. Something powerful enough to stop Klaus, to save Caroline, to protect them all. The Tribrid who had mastered death, reborn for this moment. Caroline awoke to pain, sharp, throbbing agony in her head and a burning sensation in her veins. She was bound to a stone altar with chains that sizzled against her skin, vervain-soaked, she realized with a wince. Ah, you're awake! Excellent timing! Klaus stood a few feet away, arranging objects on a small table. Behind him, the ruins of the old witch house loomed in the moonlight, its broken walls and exposed timbers creating twisted shadows. What do you want with me? Caroline demanded, her voice hoarser than she expected. Directly to the point. I appreciate that in a vampire. Klaus approached, studying her with clinical interest. What I want, Caroline Forbes, is to understand what my brother sees in you. I don't know what you're talking about. She lied, testing the chains despite the pain it caused. Klaus smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. Harrison has always had a weakness for lost causes and brave hearts. But you're different. He's risking everything for you, his plans, his siblings, even his secrets. I barely know him. Caroline protested. And yet, Klaus leaned closer. He's coming for you right now. I can feel it. The connection between us has always been unique. A female voice spoke from the shadows. Everything is prepared. Caroline turned her head to see a woman emerge from the ruins, beautiful, with dark skin and eyes that held ancient knowledge. A witch, definitely, and a powerful one judging by the magical energy that seemed to radiate from her. Thank you, Greta, Klaus said, not taking his eyes off Caroline. And our other guest? Secured in the cellar, Greta replied. The werewolf is becoming agitated as moonrise approaches. Caroline's heart sank. Tyler. It had to be. Let him go, she pleaded. He has nothing to do with this. On the contrary, Klaus replied. Mr. Lockwood is an essential component of tonight's events. As are you. Horror dawned as Caroline realized what he meant. The sacrifice. You're going to use me as the vampire. Initially, that was the plan, Klaus acknowledged, returning to his table of artifacts. But circumstances have evolved. You're now serving a far more valuable purpose. As bait, Caroline spat. Klaus smiled. Precisely. Although, he added, lifting a silver dagger from the table, that doesn't mean you won't still contribute to the ritual in other ways. Before Caroline could respond, a commotion erupted from the eastern edge of the clearing. Shouts, the sound of breaking wood, a female voice raised in anger. Right on schedule, Klaus murmured. My siblings, attempting a rescue. How predictably noble. He nodded to Greta, who raised her hands and began chanting. The air around the witch house shimmered as a barrier spell snapped into place. Convenient, isn't it? Klaus commented to Caroline. All those dead Bennett witches providing power for Greta's magic. This location has quite the supernatural history. More sounds of fighting reached them, Rebekah's voice, now Elijah's, both sounding frustrated as they encountered the barrier. They can't get through. Caroline realized aloud. No, Klaus agreed. But they're not supposed to. They're the diversion, nothing more. He turned toward the western edge of the clearing, his expression expectant. The real threat will come from there. As if on cue, a figure emerged from the forest to the west, Harrison, moving at human pace, his face set in grim determination. Unlike his siblings, he approached the barrier cautiously, studying it rather than attempting to break through immediately. Harrison! Caroline called out, earning a sharp look from Klaus. Silence. The original hybrid warned. Or I'll have Greta seal your pretty lips shut. Harrison's eyes found Caroline, relief flashing briefly in their depths before his focus returned to Klaus. Let her go, he said, his voice carrying easily across the clearing. Your quarrel is with me, brother. Quarrel? Klaus raised his eyebrows in mock surprise. I have no quarrel with you, Harrison. Merely questions. Questions about what you've become. Then ask them. Harrison replied, still studying the barrier. You don't need hostages for a conversation. Klaus laughed, the sound chilling in its genuine amusement. But I do need insurance that you'll answer truthfully. Miss Forbes provides that insurance. Harrison's hands clenched at his sides, but his voice remained calm. What do you want to know? Everything, Klaus replied simply. About Harry Potter. About the magic you shouldn't be able to perform. About the memories that have been returning to you. Caroline watched Harrison's face, saw the shock register briefly before he controlled his expression. How long have you known? Suspected? For centuries. Known for certain? Klaus gestured to Greta. Since my witch confirmed the energy signature of your magic. It's not of this world, brother. Just as you are not truly of this family. Pain flashed across Harrison's features, so quickly Caroline might have missed it if she hadn't been watching closely. I am a Mikaelson, he said firmly. Whatever else I may be. Are you? Klaus tilted his head. The brother I knew would never oppose the breaking of my curse. Would never risk everything for a baby vampire he barely knows. He glanced at Caroline. Unless, of course, she reminds you of someone from your other life. Harrison went very still. What are you implying? Souls find each other across lifetimes, across worlds. Klaus replied, his tone almost academic. Miss Forbes may be more to you than you realize. A connection to the life you lost when you became Harrison Mikaelson. Caroline frowned, not understanding. What was Klaus talking about? How could she be connected to Harrison's past life? Enough games, Harrison said, his patience clearly wearing thin. Release Caroline, and we'll talk. I'll tell you everything I know about my condition. A generous offer. Klaus acknowledged. But incomplete. I don't just want information, brother. I want demonstration. With a nod to Greta, the barrier directly in front of Harrison shimmered and dissolved, creating an opening just wide enough for one person. Enter, Klaus invited. Show me what the famous Harry Potter can do. Harrison hesitated, clearly suspecting a trap. His gaze moved to Caroline, then back to Klaus. Finally, he stepped forward, crossing the threshold into the ritual space. The moment he did so, the barrier sealed behind him. Greta began chanting again, and Caroline felt the magic in the air intensify, layers of spells activating, converging on Harrison. To her surprise, Harrison didn't look concerned. In fact, as he moved further into the clearing, he seemed almost expectant. as if everything were proceeding according to some plan only he understood. Now, Klaus said, gesturing expansively. Show me, brother. Show me the magic that defies the laws of nature. Show me what makes you unique among our kind. Harrison stopped several yards away from Klaus, his posture relaxed despite the danger. Very well, he agreed. But remember, you asked for this. He closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them again, they seemed to glow with inner light. Not the yellow of his werewolf nature, but an intense, vibrant green that reminded Caroline of the killing curse Bonnie had once described from her grimoire studies. Harrison raised his hand, not toward Klaus but toward the sky. His voice, when he spoke, carried power unlike anything Caroline had ever heard before. Expecto Patronum! A burst of silver-white light erupted from his palm, coalescing into a form that made Caroline gasp aloud. A stag, magnificent, ethereal, radiating pure protective energy. It cantered around Harrison once, then charged directly at the barrier where Elijah and Rebekah were still trying to break through. The moment the silver stag touched the barrier, it shattered like glass, magical energy dispersing in a shower of sparks. Elijah and Rebekah surged forward, but Klaus merely smiled, as if this development were exactly what he'd expected. The Patronus charm, he said, sounding impressed despite himself. Defensive magic of the highest order, unique to your world. Beautiful. Harrison didn't lower his hand. The stag returned to his side, standing protectively between him and Klaus. There's your demonstration, he said. Now release Caroline. Not quite yet, Klaus replied. That was merely the prelude. The true test is still to come. He moved to his table and picked up the wooden box Caroline had noticed earlier. With reverent care, he opened it and removed what appeared to be a simple wooden stick. Do you recognize this? Klaus asked, holding it up. Harrison's reaction was immediate and visceral. His face drained of color, and the Patronus beside him flickered momentarily as his concentration wavered. The Elder Wand? He whispered. How did you come by the most powerful wand ever created? Klaus smiled. It found me, brother. Just as you did. Just as all the pieces of this puzzle have been assembling themselves for centuries. Caroline had no idea what they were talking about, but the tension between the brothers had shifted into something deeper, more primal. This was about more than Klaus's curse or Harrison's dual nature. This was about power, ancient, fundamental power. Klaus, Harrison said, his voice low with warning. You don't understand what you're dealing with. Don't I? Klaus challenged. The Deathly Hallows. 3 objects that, when united under one master, grant dominion over death itself. He twirled the wand between his fingers. And you, brother, were once that master. In another life, another world, but the connection remains. Harrison shook his head. That power isn't meant for this world. The consequences are precisely what I'm counting on. Klaus interrupted. The breaking of my curse is merely the beginning. With the power of the Hallows, with your magic added to my hybrid nature, I'll be truly immortal. Truly unstoppable. Caroline watched Harrison's face, saw understanding dawn there, followed by horror. That's why you brought me here, he said. Not just for information or demonstration. You intend to absorb my power somehow. Absorb is such an ugly word, Klaus replied. I prefer integrate. After all, we are family. With a sudden gesture, Klaus tossed the Elder Wand directly at Harrison, who caught it reflexively. The moment his fingers closed around the ancient wood, a pulse of energy swept through the clearing, knocking everyone but the originals off their feet. Caroline felt the chains binding her loosen slightly with the magical disruption. Harrison stared at the wand in his hand, emotions warring across his face, recognition, fear, and something that looked almost like completion. You remember it, Klaus observed. The feel of it in your hand. The power it contains. Slowly, Harrison nodded. I remember. Good, Klaus said, satisfaction evident in his voice. Because memory is key to the ritual. Your memories specifically. The memories of Harry Potter. Greta approached, carrying a silver bowl filled with a dark liquid. The potion is ready, she told Klaus. Excellent. Klaus turned back to Harrison. One last component needed, brother. Freely given, I hope, though we can take it by force if necessary. Harrison's eyes narrowed. My blood. Your blood, Klaus confirmed. The blood of a Tribrid who has mastered death. Combined with the power of the full moon tomorrow night, it will unlock possibilities even our mother never dreamed of. Caroline watched Harrison carefully, saw the subtle shift in his posture as he made some decision. The Patronus stag still stood beside him, its silver light illuminating the clearing with an otherworldly glow. And if I give you my blood? Harrison asked. What happens to Caroline? To Tyler Lockwood? They live, Klaus promised. I have alternate sacrifices arranged for the ritual. These two were merely incentives for your cooperation. Harrison was silent for a long moment, his gaze moving between Klaus, Caroline, and the wand in his hand. Finally, he nodded. Very well. He stepped forward, rolling up his sleeve. But as he did so, he caught Caroline's eye and gave her the briefest nod, a signal. Understanding flashed through her. Whatever Harrison was planning, he needed her ready to move. Carefully, Caroline tested her chains again. Yes, definitely looser after that magical pulse. With a bit of leverage, she might be able to break free. Harrison approached Klaus and Greta, the elder wand still held loosely in his right hand. How much blood do you need? Just a vial, Greta replied, producing a small silver knife. The potency matters more than the quantity. Harrison extended his left arm, wrist up. As Greta moved to make the cut, he spoke quietly. Klaus, there's something you should know about the Elder Wand. Klaus raised an eyebrow. And what's that? It answers to only one master at a time, Harrison said. Then several things happened at once. Harrison flicked the Elder Wand in a complex pattern, shouting, Expulso! A blast of concussive force erupted from the tip, sending Klaus and Greta flying backward into the ruins of the witch house. Simultaneously, the silver stag charged at Caroline, its antlers slicing through her chains like they were made of paper. She rolled off the altar, barely avoiding a blast of retaliatory magic from Greta, who had recovered with supernatural speed. Run! Harrison shouted to her. Find Elijah and Rebekah. Caroline hesitated, unwilling to leave him facing Klaus alone. But before she could argue, Klaus emerged from the ruins, his eyes glowing yellow, fangs extended in rage. You will regret that, brother, he snarled. Harrison stood his ground, the elder wand raised. I've regretted many things in my long life, Klaus. This won't be one of them. Caroline tore her gaze away and ran toward the eastern edge of the clearing where she'd last seen Elijah and Rebekah. Behind her, the sounds of magical combat erupted. Explosions, shouts, the crackle of energy tearing through the air. She found the original siblings engaged with several of Klaus's vampire minions at the edge of the woods. Rebekah spotted her first, relief flashing across her face. Caroline. Where's Harrison? Fighting Klaus. Caroline panted. He has some kind of special wand, the Elder Wand? Klaus wanted it for the ritual. Elijah dispatched the last of the vampires with brutal efficiency, then turned to Caroline. The Elder Wand? He repeated. Are you certain that's what they called it? Caroline nodded. Klaus said something about Deathly Hallows, about Harrison being their master in his past life. The siblings exchanged a significant look. We need to get back to them, Rebekah insisted. Wait. Caroline grabbed her arm. Tyler Lockwood is being held somewhere in the cellar. We need to free him too. I'll find the werewolf, Elijah decided. You two help Harrison. As he disappeared toward the ruins, Caroline and Rebekah raced back toward the main clearing. The scene that greeted them was like something from an apocalyptic vision. The ground was scorched in patterns that resembled magical runes. Trees at the edge of the clearing had been uprooted or shattered. In the center, Harrison and Klaus circled each other, both bloody but unbowed, power crackling around them like living lightning. Greta lay motionless near the altar, whether dead or merely unconscious, Caroline couldn't tell. The elder wand in Harrison's hand glowed with an internal light that cast strange shadows across the clearing. "It's over, Klaus," Harrison was saying. "Your witch is down. Your barrier is broken. Your leverage is gone." "It's far from over," Klaus replied, his voice distorted by rage and his partially transformed werewolf features. "I don't need the ritual to kill you, brother. I just need my teeth." With inhuman speed, Klaus lunged at Harrison. But instead of dodging, Harrison stood his ground, the wand raised. At the last possible moment, he slashed it downward with a shout. "Sectum Sempra." Klaus's charge halted abruptly as dozens of invisible blades seemed to slice into him from every direction. Blood erupted from wounds that appeared across his chest, arms, and face. He staggered backward, momentarily shocked by the effectiveness of the attack. "What magic is this?" he demanded, already healing but clearly in pain. "Dark magic," Harrison replied, his voice hollow. "Created by a troubled soul in a world far from here. Magic I swore never to use again." Klaus laughed despite his wounds. "And yet here you are, using it against family. Perhaps you're more like me than you care to admit." "I'm nothing like you," Harrison said. "I fight to protect. You fight to dominate. A semantic distinction at best," Klaus countered. He gestured to the devastation around them. "Look at what you've done, brother. All this destruction, this darkness, it comes from within you. The power you wield is no more light than my own." For a brief moment, doubt flashed across Harrison's face. Caroline could see the internal struggle. Harrison Mikaelson's millennium of vampire existence warring with Harry Potter's moral center. "Harrison," she called out, unable to remain silent any longer. "Don't listen to him." Klaus's head snapped toward her, a predatory smile spreading across his bloodied face. "Ah, the baby vampire returns. Perfect timing." Before anyone could react, Klaus blurred into motion, reappearing directly behind Caroline with his arm around her throat. "Now, brother, let's renegotiate." Harrison froze, the elder wand still raised but his confidence visibly shaken. "Let her go, Klaus. This is between us." "It became about her the moment you chose her over family," Klaus replied. "The moment you decided a vampire you barely know was worth betraying your own blood. It's not a betrayal to stop you from killing an innocent girl," Harrison argued. "It's not a betrayal to prevent you from becoming an even greater monster than you already are." "Monster?" Klaus's grip on Caroline tightened. "I am what our mother made me. What our father's hatred shaped me into. What centuries of running and fighting have forged." His voice dropped, becoming almost plaintive. "I never wanted to be this, Harrison. Any more than you wanted to be a wizard reborn into a vampire's body." Something in Klaus's words seemed to reach Harrison. His stance softened slightly, the wand lowering a fraction. "Then stop this," he urged. "Release Caroline. Abandon the sacrifice. We can find another way to break your curse, one that doesn't require innocent blood." For a moment, a brief, tantalizing moment, Caroline thought Klaus might actually consider it. His grip loosened infinitesimally, and something like longing flashed across his face. Then Rebekah, who had been maneuvering silently behind Klaus, made her move. She lunged, a stake aimed at her brother's back, not to kill him, which would be impossible, but to disable him long enough to free Caroline. Klaus sensed the attack at the last second. He spun, throwing Caroline aside with vampire strength that sent her crashing into a tree. He caught Rebekah's wrist, twisting until the stake clattered to the ground. "Sister," he hissed. "Always taking the wrong side." "The only wrong side is yours, Nick," Rebekah shot back. With their supernatural speed, the confrontation between siblings became a blur of motion too fast for even Caroline's vampire vision to fully track. Harrison darted to her side, helping her up with surprising gentleness given the battle raging around them. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his eyes scanning her for injuries. "I'll live," she assured him. But we need to stop them before they tear each other apart. Harrison nodded grimly. Stay back. He turned toward the fighting originals, the elder wand raised once more. With a complex movement and a shouted, Immobilis! Both Klaus and Rebekah froze in place, suspended in mid-motion as if time itself had stopped for them. Rebekah's eyes darted frantically, the only part of her that could still move. Klaus's expression was one of pure fury, made more terrifying by its stillness. Enough, Harrison said, moving to stand between them. This ends now. With another flick of the wand, he released Rebekah, who stumbled slightly before regaining her balance. What did you do to him? She asked, staring at Klaus's immobilized form. Freezing charm, Harrison replied. It won't hold him long, he's too powerful. But it gives us time. Elijah appeared at the edge of the clearing, supporting a weakened but very much alive Tyler Lockwood. The werewolf is secure, he announced. And I've located the moonstone among Greta's possessions. Good, Harrison said. Then we have everything we need. Everything we need for what? Caroline asked, moving closer despite Harrison's warning to stay back. Harrison turned to her, his green eyes reflecting the magical light still emanating from the elder wand. To break Klaus's curse without the sacrifice. Klaus's eyes widened, the only indication that he had heard and understood Harrison's words. Is that possible? Rebekah asked skeptically. With this, Harrison held up the elder wand. And with the proper spell, yes. The magic of my world operated differently. It focused on intent, on the power of sacrifice freely given rather than taken by force. Caroline glanced at Klaus, still frozen in mid-attack. And you think he'll just accept this alternative? After centuries of planning his ritual? He doesn't have much choice at the moment, Harrison pointed out. But more importantly, I believe that somewhere beneath the rage and pain, Klaus wants what we all want, freedom. Liberation from the curse that has defined his existence. Elijah brought Tyler closer, settling him on a fallen log. What do you need for this spell? Harrison considered. Blood from Klaus. The moonstone. And... He hesitated, looking at Caroline. Blood freely given from each supernatural species involved in the original curse. Meaning? Caroline prompted. Vampire, werewolf, witch, and doppelganger. Harrison clarified. Symbolic representatives of the forces that bound Klaus's werewolf side. Elena. Caroline realized. You still need Elena for this. Not necessarily for her doppelganger blood. Harrison explained. Any human would do for that component. But her willing participation, her freely given blood, would make the spell more powerful. Rebekah scoffed. And you think she'll agree to help Klaus? The very vampire who's been hunting her? She might, Caroline said slowly. If it means no one has to die. If it means ending this once and for all. She met Harrison's gaze. I can convince her. Harrison nodded gratefully. We have until tomorrow night's full moon. The spell must be performed then, when the boundary between worlds is thinnest. Worlds? Elijah repeated. You speak as if your magic comes from another reality entirely. It does, Harrison confirmed. A world parallel to this one, where magic follows different rules. Where I was once Harry Potter, the boy who lived. The declaration hung in the air, momentous in its finality. For perhaps the first time since his memories began returning, Harrison had fully acknowledged his dual nature, not as delusion or dream, but as absolute truth. A strangled sound from Klaus drew their attention. The freezing charm was weakening, his fingers beginning to twitch as he fought against the magical restraint. We need to secure him, Elijah said. Until the full moon. Harrison nodded. I can modify the spell to bind him temporarily. But we'll need a secure location. The Salvatore cellar, Caroline suggested. It held Elijah. It would have to be reinforced with magic, Harrison replied. Klaus is stronger than any of us. As they discussed options, Caroline noticed something strange happening to the elder wand in Harrison's hand. It seemed to be pulsing, its glow intensifying in rhythm with Klaus's struggles against the freezing charm. "Harrison," she said urgently, pointing to the wand. "Something's happening." Harrison looked down, his expression changing from confusion to alarm as he saw the wand's reaction. "It's responding to him," he realized. "To his hybrid nature." Before anyone could respond, Klaus broke free of the freezing charm with a roar of triumph. He lunged not at Harrison, but at the Elder Wand itself, his hand closing around it at the same moment Harrison attempted to cast another spell. The resulting explosion of magical energy threw everyone in the clearing off their feet. Caroline felt herself flying backward, unable to stop her momentum until she crashed into something solid, a tree, or perhaps one of the witch house walls. When her vision cleared, she saw Harrison and Klaus at the center of a maelstrom of magical energy, both gripping the Elder Wand, either willing to relinquish it. Light poured from the wand, surrounding them in a cocoon of power that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. "What's happening?" she shouted to Rebekah, who was picking herself up nearby. "I don't know," Rebekah called back. "But we need to separate them." Elijah was already moving toward the brothers, but as he approached the barrier of light, he was thrown back with tremendous force. "We can't get through," he shouted. "The magic is too strong." Inside the cocoon of light, Klaus and Harrison were locked in a battle of wills, both glowing with the power flowing through them from the Elder Wand. Caroline could see their lips moving, but couldn't hear what they were saying over the roar of magical energy. Suddenly, Harrison's head snapped back, his eyes rolling white. Klaus's expression changed from rage to shock as the same phenomenon affected him a moment later. The light around them intensified until Caroline had to shield her eyes against its brilliance. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the light winked out. The roaring ceased. Silence fell across the clearing. When Caroline could see again, she found Harrison and Klaus collapsed on the ground, the Elder Wand lying between them, inert and ordinary-looking once more. She rushed to Harrison's side, ignoring the potential danger from Klaus, who lay equally motionless nearby. "Harrison!" she called, gently shaking him. "Harrison, wake up!" Slowly, his eyes opened, those vivid green eyes that seemed to hold centuries of memories. He stared at Caroline as if seeing her for the first time. "Caroline," he whispered. "I remember. I remember everything." Chapter 3: Eternal Vows. "I remember everything." Harrison's words hung in the air as Caroline helped him sit up, his body trembling with aftershocks of the magical confrontation. The clearing around them still crackled with residual energy, leaves and debris swirling in unnatural patterns across the scorched earth. "What do you mean, everything?" Caroline asked, supporting his weight as he struggled to stand. Harrison's green eyes were different somehow, clearer, more focused, as if a veil had been lifted. "Harry Potter," he whispered. "My life as him. My death. Everything in between." He looked at his hands in wonder. "It's not fragments anymore. I remember it all." Rebekah appeared at his other side, concern etched across her features. "Harrison? Are you all right?" "I'm..." He paused, searching for the right word. "Whole. For the first time in centuries, I feel whole." A groan from nearby reminded them that Klaus was also regaining consciousness. Elijah was already kneeling beside his brother, watchful but not hostile. "Klaus," Harrison said, gently extracting himself from Caroline's support to approach his fallen brother. "What did you see?" Klaus's eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, then sharpening with recognition. But instead of the rage Caroline expected, his expression held something like wonder. "I saw," Klaus began, his voice hoarse. "I saw your world. Hogwarts. The war. Your sacrifice." He struggled to sit up, Elijah silently helping him. "I felt what you felt when you walked to your death." The brothers stared at each other, something unspoken passing between them. Caroline glanced at Rebekah, who looked equally confused by this unexpected turn. "The wand," Harrison said, gesturing to the Elder Wand lying innocuously on the ground between them. "When we both touched it, it created a connection. My memories flowed into you. More than memories," Klaus replied. Understanding. Context. He looked around the clearing as if seeing it anew. What have I become, Harrison? What monster have I allowed myself to be? Rebekah's jaw dropped slightly at the uncharacteristic self-reflection from her most ruthless brother. Nick? Are you all right? Klaus's gaze shifted to her. No, sister. I haven't been all right for 1,000 years. He turned back to Harrison. But perhaps I could be. Harrison reached down cautiously and picked up the elder wand, which remained dormant in his hand. The ritual, he said. My way. No sacrifices. Will you consent? Klaus was silent for a long moment, internal conflict visible on his face. Finally, he nodded. Yes. Caroline could hardly believe what she was witnessing. Klaus Mikaelson, the most feared original, the vampire who had terrorized the supernatural world for centuries, agreeing to abandon his plans for the sacrifice? It seemed impossible. How do we know this isn't a trick? She asked, unable to contain her suspicion. Klaus's eyes met hers, and Caroline was startled by the genuine pain she saw there. Because I experienced his death, he said simply. I felt what it means to sacrifice yourself willingly for those you love. He looked away. It's changed me. Temporarily, perhaps, Elijah observed, ever the pragmatist. The question is whether this change will last beyond tonight. We'll have to risk it, Harrison decided. The alternative is to kill him, which we can't do, or to keep him imprisoned indefinitely, which isn't sustainable. He extended his hand to Klaus. Brother, let me help you, as you once helped me when I was new to vampire life. After a moment's hesitation, Klaus took the offered hand, allowing Harrison to pull him to his feet. The two brothers stood face to face, either speaking, a millennium of complex history hanging between them. What now? Rebekah asked, breaking the silence. Harrison turned to the group. We prepare for tomorrow night's ritual. We'll need a few hours to recover, then gather the necessary components. Elena, Caroline said. I'll talk to her, explain everything. And I'll secure a location for the ritual. Elijah offered. Somewhere with natural magical properties, but more private than this place. Harrison nodded. The quarry, he suggested. It sits on a convergence of ley lines, like the witch house, but with fewer connections to Bennett magic. What about me? Rebekah asked. Stay with Klaus, Harrison replied. Make sure this revelation sticks. Klaus looked almost offended. I don't need a babysitter. Consider it family bonding time, Harrison suggested with a faint smile. You and Becca have a millennium of issues to work through. This seems as good a time as any to start. Rebekah rolled her eyes but didn't object. Fine. But you owe me for this, Harrison. As the group began to disperse, Caroline hanging back to help Tyler to his feet, Harrison caught her arm gently. Caroline, wait. There's something else I need to tell you. She looked up at him, curiosity mingling with the exhaustion and confusion of the night's events. What is it? Harrison glanced at the others, who were moving toward the edge of the clearing. Not here, he said quietly. Meet me at the falls in 2 hours? There's something you need to know. Something about us. Us? Caroline repeated, her heart skipping despite herself. Yes. His green eyes held hers, intense and sincere. I promise it will make sense then. Caroline hesitated, then nodded. 2 hours. As Harrison moved away to consult with Elijah, Caroline couldn't help but wonder what revelation awaited her at the falls. After everything she'd witnessed tonight, magical battles, supernatural memories, and Klaus's apparent redemption, she should have been beyond surprise. Yet something in Harrison's gaze, in the way he'd said, us, sent a thrill of anticipation through her that had nothing to do with vampires or curses or ancient magic. It felt, strangely enough, like destiny. The falls thundered nearby as Caroline arrived at the meeting spot, the sound of cascading water a constant backdrop to her tumultuous thoughts. She'd taken Tyler home, ensuring he was safe and recovering from his ordeal, before making excuses to her mother about staying at Bonnie's for the night. More lies. But necessary ones, at least until this was over. Harrison was already waiting, standing at the edge of the cliff overlooking the falls, moonlight silvering his dark hair. He'd changed clothes since their confrontation with Klaus, now wearing a simple black Henley and jeans that somehow made him look both more human and more timeless. "You came," he said without turning, vampire senses having alerted him to her presence. "I said I would." Caroline moved to stand beside him, gazing out at the falls. "So what's this big revelation about us?" Harrison was silent for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "When I told you I remembered everything, I meant it literally. Not just fragments or impressions, but every detail of my life as Harry Potter. That's good, right?" Caroline prompted when he paused. "Yes and no." Harrison turned to face her, his expression serious. Harry Potter had friends, close friends who were like family to him. A boy named Ron Weasley and a girl named Hermione Granger. Caroline nodded, remembering the names from their previous conversations. "Your best friends?" "Yes." Harrison took a breath. "Hermione was brilliant. Logical. Fiercely loyal. Brave beyond measure, though she never saw herself that way." His gaze intensified. She had this way of cutting through nonsense, of seeing the heart of problems and people. Something in his tone made Caroline's skin prickle. "She sounds special." She was. Harrison took a step closer. "When I first met you, Caroline, I felt drawn to you. As if I knew you somehow. Now I understand why." Caroline's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "Wait, are you saying, your soul?" Harrison said softly. "It reminds me of hers. Not identical, you're very much your own person, but similar in essence. In the qualities that matter most. That's why Klaus said I might be more to you than I realized." Caroline recalled. "A connection to your past life." Harrison nodded. "Souls can echo across worlds, across lifetimes. It's rare, but it happens. Especially when there's unfinished business." "Unfinished business?" Caroline repeated. "Were you and this Hermione?" "No," Harrison said quickly. "Not in that way. We were friends, family by choice if not blood. But there was always—" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "A potential," Caroline suggested. "Something that might have been, in different circumstances." "Yes." Relief crossed his features at her understanding. "And now, finding you in this life, when I'm no longer the boy I was, when you're so much your own woman." He trailed off, suddenly uncertain. Caroline absorbed this revelation, emotions warring within her. It was bizarre, overwhelming, being told her soul echoed someone from another world, another reality. Yet something about it rang true, felt right on a level deeper than conscious thought. "So what does this mean?" she finally asked. "For us, now? Am I just a replacement for her?" "No," Harrison said with such vehemence that Caroline took a step back. "Never think that. You are Caroline Forbes, unique, extraordinary in your own right." His expression softened. "What it means is entirely up to you. I only thought you deserved to know why I felt connected to you from the start." Caroline studied his face, finding nothing but sincerity there. "And if I want it to mean nothing? If I want to walk away? Then you walk away," Harrison replied simply. "Your life is your own, Caroline. Your choices are yours alone." The straightforward answer surprised her. No manipulation, no vampire compulsion, no supernatural destiny he expected her to fulfill. Just truth, and the freedom to respond to it however she chose. "And if I don't want to walk away?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the falls. Harrison's eyes darkened slightly, hope warring with caution. "Then we see where this connection leads. No expectations, no predetermined path. Just us discovering what we might be to each other in this lifetime." Caroline considered his words, considered everything she'd learned about Harrison Mikaelson in the past few days. Original vampire. Hybrid. Witch. A soul reborn from another world. It was madness by any rational standard. Yet standing here with him felt like the sanest choice she'd ever made. I don't want to walk away, she decided. I want to see where this leads. Whatever this is. Relief and joy transformed Harrison's features, making him look younger, more like the boy he must have been before a millennium of vampire existence. Caroline Forbes, he said softly. You continue to surprise me. Good, she replied with a smile. Because if we're going to explore this connection, you should know I hate being predictable. Harrison laughed, the sound merging with the thundering falls behind them. I'll keep that in mind. His expression turned more serious. There's something else you should know. More supernatural bombshells? Caroline asked wryly. Because I've hit my quota for the night. No, this is… Harrison hesitated. It's about Rebekah. Your sister, Caroline said, suddenly wary. What about her? She's more than my sister, Harrison explained carefully. Over the centuries, our relationship has evolved. There have been times when we were more than siblings to each other. Caroline blinked, processing this new information. You and Rebekah are involved? Romantically? It's complicated, Harrison admitted. Vampire existence is long, Caroline. Very long. Conventions that seem fixed to humans become fluid over centuries. Rebekah has been my constant, sometimes my sister, sometimes my lover, always my family. And now? Caroline asked, trying to keep judgment from her voice. She knew vampire society operated differently, but this was still a lot to absorb. Now she's important to me. As are you. Harrison met her gaze directly. I won't lie to you, Caroline. I won't pretend Rebekah means nothing to me beyond family. But I also won't pretend what I feel for you isn't real, isn't powerful in its own right. Caroline stepped back, needing space to think. So what exactly are you saying? That you want both of us? That I need to share you with your sister? Harrison winced at her blunt phrasing. I'm saying that vampire relationships aren't always exclusive in the human sense. That hearts that live for centuries develop capacity for loving more than one person. He took a breath. And yes, in an ideal world I wouldn't have to choose between you. That's… Caroline struggled for words. A lot to process. I know, Harrison acknowledged. And I don't expect an answer tonight. Or any answer at all, if this is too much. I just wanted to be honest with you. About everything. Caroline appreciated the honesty, even as her mind reeled with implications. She'd been a vampire for barely a year, still thinking in human terms about relationships, about love. The idea of sharing Harrison with Rebekah should have repulsed her. Yet something in her understood what he was saying about vampire existence, about hearts expanding rather than dividing over centuries. And hadn't she herself felt torn between Tyler and Matt, between different kinds of love that existed simultaneously? I need time, she finally said. To think about this. All of it. Harrison nodded, relief evident in his expression. Not rejection, then? Just a request for time. Of course. Take all the time you need. But, Caroline continued, stepping closer to him again. I'm still in. For tomorrow's ritual. For helping Elena. For figuring out what this connection between us means. Thank you, Harrison said softly. He reached out, his fingers brushing hers lightly, a touch that sent electricity racing up Caroline's arm. For everything. They stood together at the edge of the falls, not speaking, just existing in the same space as the moon climbed higher in the night sky. Tomorrow would bring the ritual, would determine Klaus's fate and Elena's safety and perhaps the future of Mystic Falls itself. But tonight, in this moment, there was only Caroline and Harrison and the tentative possibility blossoming between them, a connection that transcended worlds, transcended lifetimes, yet remained fundamentally human in its uncertainty. And that, Caroline thought, was perhaps the most magical thing of all. Elena Gilbert stared at Caroline as if she'd grown a second head. Let me get this straight. You want me to voluntarily give my blood to help Klaus, The vampire who's been trying to kill me, break his curse through some alternate ritual performed by his brother who's actually the reincarnation of a wizard from another dimension? They sat in Elena's bedroom, morning sunlight streaming through the windows, the normality of the setting at odds with the supernatural insanity of their conversation. When you put it like that, it sounds crazy, Caroline admitted. Because it is crazy. Elena threw up her hands. Care, how do you know this isn't just another trap? That these originals aren't manipulating you? Caroline had anticipated this reaction, had prepared for it. Because I've seen Harrison's magic, Elena. I've seen Klaus's transformation after touching the Elder Wand. This is real. Elena paced the room, running her hands through her long dark hair. Even if it is real, why should I help Klaus? After everything he's done? Because the alternative is worse, Caroline replied simply. If we don't do this Harrison's way, Klaus will eventually find a way to complete the original sacrifice. People will die, maybe Tyler, maybe me, definitely you. Elena stopped pacing, her expression troubled. What does Damon think about this plan? Caroline winced. I haven't exactly told the Salvatores yet. Caroline! I know. Caroline stood, moving to face her friend directly. But Damon would just go charging in with stakes blazing, and Stefan would get all broody and protective, and neither approach would help. This requires diplomacy, Elena. Finesse. And you learned diplomacy when, exactly? Elena challenged, though a reluctant smile tugged at her lips. I'm a fast learner, Caroline replied with a shrug. Look, just come to the quarry tonight. Meet Harrison. Hear him out. If you still don't trust him after that, you can walk away. No one's forcing you to participate. Elena considered this, clearly torn. And Bonnie? What about her plan to save me during the sacrifice? Harrison says it's too risky, that Bonnie channeling that much power could kill her. Caroline took Elena's hands. He has another way. A better way. After a long moment, Elena nodded. Fine. I'll come. I'll listen. But I'm bringing Stefan with me. Caroline bit back her instinctive objection. Having a Salvatore present would complicate things, but arguing would only make Elena more suspicious. Okay, but just Stefan. Damon is too volatile for this kind of meeting. Agreed, Elena said, squeezing Caroline's hands. And Care? I hope you know what you're doing. So do I, Caroline replied with more confidence than she felt. So do I. The quarry glowed with an otherworldly light as Harrison completed the ritual preparations. Runes inscribed in sand circled the central altar, a flat stone that had been part of the quarry for centuries. Candles placed at cardinal points flickered despite the absence of wind, their flames responding to the magical energy building in the site. The positioning is perfect, Harrison told Elijah, who was arranging small bowls around the altar. The ley lines run directly beneath us, and the full moon will be directly overhead at midnight. Elijah nodded, his movements precise and efficient as always. And you're certain this will work? That your Harry Potter magic will function properly in our world? The Elder Wand makes it possible, Harrison explained, gesturing to the ancient wand tucked securely in his belt. It's a bridge between worlds, between types of magic. With it, I can channel the power needed for the ritual. Rebekah approached from the edge of the quarry, her expression guarded. Klaus is getting restless, she reported. The closer we get to moonrise, the more agitated his wolf side becomes. Harrison glanced at his brother, who paced at the quarry's edge like a caged animal. The connection forged when they both touched the Elder Wand had temporarily subdued Klaus's more violent impulses, but the approaching full moon was testing that fragile peace. Has he said anything about backing out? Harrison asked quietly. Rebekah shook her head. No. If anything, he seems afraid. Afraid? Elijah looked up, surprised. Klaus? Not of the ritual, Rebekah clarified. Of reverting to his old self, I think. Of losing this clarity he's found. Harrison understood. The memories Klaus had absorbed, Harry Potter's memories of sacrifice, of love powerful enough to defeat death itself, had shown him a different way of existing. A glimpse of redemption that would vanish like smoke if he returned to his former path. The ritual will help stabilize him, Harrison assured them. Once his wolf side is no longer suppressed, much of his rage should dissipate naturally. Should, Elijah emphasized. There are no guarantees with magic this experimental. There never are, Harrison acknowledged. But it's our best option. The sound of vehicles approaching drew their attention. Headlights appeared at the quarry entrance, Caroline's car, followed by Stefan's vintage Porsche. They're here, Rebekah observed unnecessarily. Let's hope your baby vampire managed to convince the doppelganger. Harrison shot her a warning look. Be nice, Becca. We need Elena's willing participation for this to work. Rebekah rolled her eyes but nodded. Fine. I'll be a perfect lady. That would be a first, Elijah murmured, earning a glare from his sister. Harrison moved to meet the newcomers as they parked and exited their vehicles. Caroline immediately came to his side, her presence steadying in the charged atmosphere. Elena agreed to listen. She told him in a low voice. But she brought Stefan. And she's skeptical, to put it mildly. Understandable, Harrison replied. I'll do my best to convince her. Elena approached cautiously, Stefan's protective presence at her shoulder. Her gaze took in the ritual preparations, then fixed on Harrison with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. So you're the original Tribrid, she said by way of greeting. Caroline's told me about you. Harrison Mikaelson, he confirmed, extending his hand. Thank you for coming, Elena. I know it couldn't have been an easy decision. After a moment's hesitation, Elena shook his hand. I'm here to listen. That's all I've promised. That's all I ask. Harrison gestured toward the ritual area. Please join us. I'll explain exactly what we're proposing. Stefan's eyes narrowed as he spotted Klaus at the edge of the quarry. What's he doing here? I thought this was just a discussion. Klaus is essential to the ritual, Harrison explained calmly. And yes, before you ask, he's currently neutralized as a threat. Neutralized how? Stefan demanded. No offense, but Klaus isn't exactly known for his cooperation. It's complicated, Caroline interjected. Magical memory exchange, temporary personality adjustment. Just trust me when I say he's not the same Klaus who came to town to sacrifice Elena. Stefan looked skeptical but followed as Harrison led them to the altar area. Elena's gaze darted around, taking in the magical preparations with obvious concern. This looks like a sacrifice ritual to me, she observed. Superficially, perhaps, Harrison acknowledged. But the principle is entirely different. Traditional sacrifice magic takes power by force. It destroys life to harness its energy. He gestured to the runes inscribed around them. This ritual uses freely given power, blood offered willingly, magic channeled consensually. The difference is fundamental. Blood? Elena's hand went instinctively to her throat. You still need my blood? A small amount, Harrison confirmed. Along with blood from a vampire, a werewolf, and a witch. Plus Klaus himself, and the moonstone. And this will break Klaus's curse without killing anyone? Stefan asked, still unconvinced. Yes. Harrison held Stefan's gaze steadily. The curse that binds Klaus's werewolf's side was created through death. Breaking it the traditional way requires death. But this magic, the magic I brought from my original world, operates differently. It values intent over formula, willingness over force. Your original world, Elena repeated. Caroline mentioned something about that. About you being reborn from another reality? Harrison nodded. It sounds impossible, I know. But it's true. In another life, I was Harry Potter, a wizard who sacrificed himself to save others from a magical war. That sacrifice somehow resulted in my soul being reborn here, as Harrison Mikaelson. And now your memories have returned, Stefan said, making it half question, half statement. Yes. Completely, as of last night. Harrison tapped the elder wand at his belt. This wand, a powerful magical artifact from my world, served as a catalyst when both Klaus and I touched it simultaneously. Elena studied him, searching for deception. Finding none, she asked. And what happens to Klaus if this works? He just goes on his way, free to terrorize someone else? The ritual will break his curse, allowing him to transform into a wolf at will. Harrison explained. But more importantly, it will stabilize the change that began when he absorbed my memories. The rage that has driven him for centuries should diminish significantly. Should, Stefan emphasized, echoing Elijah's earlier concern. Nothing in life is certain, Stefan, Harrison replied. Especially when it comes to magic. But I believe this is our best chance to resolve the situation without further bloodshed. Elena exchanged a look with Stefan, some silent communication passing between them. Finally, she turned back to Harrison. If I agree to this, I want something in return. Name it, Harrison said. A binding magical oath from Klaus, Elena stated. That he'll leave Mystic Falls afterward and never harm me or anyone I care about. Ever. Harrison glanced toward Klaus, who had stopped pacing to listen to their conversation. Brother? Will you agree to Elena's terms? Klaus approached slowly, careful to maintain a non-threatening demeanor. The change in him was striking. Gone was the casual cruelty, the predatory grace replaced by something more measured, more thoughtful. I will swear such an oath, Klaus agreed. Binding and unbreakable. Elena looked surprised at his easy acquiescence. Just like that? Just like that, Klaus confirmed. Contrary to popular belief, Miss Gilbert, I have no personal vendetta against you. My interest has always been in breaking my curse. His expression turned reflective. And perhaps, finding peace from the rage that has defined me for too long. The simple honesty of his statement seemed to impact Elena more than any elaborate promise could have. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Okay. I'll participate. Relief washed through Harrison. Thank you, Elena. Don't thank me yet, she replied. If this goes wrong, if anyone gets hurt. It won't, Harrison assured her. You have my word. As the group dispersed to make final preparations, Caroline touched Harrison's arm. That went better than expected. Elena Gilbert is remarkably reasonable for someone who's been hunted by my brother, Harrison observed. She's special that way. Caroline agreed. Compassionate to a fault, sometimes. She glanced toward Rebekah, who was arranging items at the altar with pointed efficiency. Have you talked to her? About us? Harrison followed her gaze. Not yet. There hasn't been time. You should, Caroline urged. Before the ritual. Just in case something goes wrong. Nothing will go wrong. Harrison insisted, though he knew the wisdom in her suggestion. Magic this complex always carried risks. Still, Caroline pressed. You should talk to her. Harrison nodded. You're right. I will. Caroline squeezed his arm once, then moved to join Elena, leaving Harrison to approach his sister. Rebekah looked up as he neared, her expression guarded. Becca, he said quietly. Can we talk? About the ritual? She asked, though her tone suggested she knew otherwise. About us, Harrison clarified. About Caroline. About everything. Rebekah's hand stilled on the ceremonial bowl she'd been positioning. So you've made your choice then? That's just it, Harrison replied. I don't want to choose. I don't think I have to. Rebekah looked up sharply. What are you saying, Harrison? I'm saying that a millennium together doesn't disappear because of new feelings, he explained carefully. I'm saying that my heart is large enough for both the love I've carried for you across centuries and this new connection I've found with Caroline. And what does she think about this arrangement? Rebekah asked, her tone skeptical. She's barely a year into vampire life. She still thinks like a human. She's considering it, Harrison replied honestly. I've told her about us, about vampire relationships over centuries. She's processing. Rebekah laughed softly, though without real humor. Processing. What a delicate way of putting it. She met his gaze directly. And if she can't accept it? If she demands exclusivity? Then I'll face that decision when it comes, Harrison said. But Becca, you should know, regardless of what happens with Caroline, you will always be essential to me. Always and forever. The familiar phrase, their family's ancient oath to each other, softened something in Rebekah's expression. Always and forever, she repeated. Even after 1,000 years, those words still matter. They always will, Harrison assured her. Rebekah studied him, something vulnerable appearing briefly in her ancient eyes. You really are different now, aren't you? With all your memories returned, with Harry Potter fully integrated into Harrison Mikaelson. Yes and no, Harrison replied thoughtfully. I'm still me, still the brother you've known for a millennium. But I'm also more complete, more balanced. He smiled slightly. Harry Potter's moral center with Harrison Mikaelson's perspective and strength. A formidable combination, Rebekah acknowledged. She reached out, touching his cheek gently. Just promise me one thing. Anything. Don't lose yourself in this new identity, she said softly. Don't forget the brother I've loved, in all the ways it's possible to love, for 1,000 years. Harrison covered her hand with his own. Never, he promised. That's the miracle of this integration, Becca. I haven't lost anything. I've only gained. She nodded, accepting his words. Then let's complete this ritual and see what the future holds for all of us. As they rejoined the others, Harrison felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The conversation with Rebekah had gone better than he dared hope. Now all that remained was the ritual itself, the final test of whether Harry Potter's magic could truly change the fate of the Mikaelson family. Midnight approached, the full moon rising above the quarry in breathtaking luminescence. Harrison stood at the altar, the elder wand in his right hand, the moonstone in his left. Around him, the participants had taken their places at cardinal points of the ritual circle. Klaus knelt at the center, bare-chested, ancestral symbols painted on his skin in a mixture of ash and herbs. The curse that bound his werewolf side was visible to Harrison's magical sight. Dark tendrils wrapped around his brother's essence, constricting his true nature. Are we ready? Harrison asked, looking around the circle. Elena nodded from the northern point, her expression resolute despite her obvious nervousness. Stefan stood just outside the circle, watchful but allowing her this choice. Tyler, representing the werewolf element, stood at the eastern point. The full moon pulled at his curse, making him shift restlessly, but determination kept him focused. Caroline occupied the southern point, her blonde hair gleaming in the moonlight, her eyes never leaving Harrison's face. The trust in her gaze strengthened him, reminded him of everything at stake. Bonnie Bennett, a last-minute addition Caroline had convinced to participate, stood at the western point. Though initially skeptical, the young witch had agreed to lend her power after Harrison explained the ritual's mechanics and its similarities to her own family's magic. Elijah and Rebekah watched from outside the circle, ready to intervene if anything went wrong, though Harrison had assured them the ritual should proceed without complications. The time has come, Harrison announced as the moon reached its zenith. When I call your element, step forward and offer your blood willingly to the circle. Remember, intent matters more than words. Focus on your desire to freely give this power, to restore balance. He raised the Elder Wand, feeling its power vibrate through him, a connection to his original world, to the magic that had defined Harry Potter's life. I call upon the elements that bound the hybrid's nature. Harrison intoned. I call upon blood freely given to undo what was forced into being. He turned to the north. Doppelganger, blood of the ancient line, step forward. Elena moved to the altar, her movements deliberate. Harrison handed her a ceremonial knife, its handle inscribed with symbols older than the Mikaelson family itself. With this offering, I break the binding of human limitation, Elena said, reciting the words Harrison had taught her. She drew the blade across her palm, allowing several drops of blood to fall into the central bowl on the altar. The moment her blood touched the vessel, it began to glow with soft, golden light. Elena stepped back, returning to her position, Stefan moving immediately to her side with a cloth for her wound. Werewolf, blood of the moon's children, step forward, Harrison continued. Tyler approached, his eyes flickering between their normal color and the amber of his wolf form as the moon's influence battled with his human control. With this offering, I acknowledge the beast within us all, Tyler said, taking the knife and cutting his palm without hesitation. His blood joined Elena's, the golden glow intensifying, now pulsing like a heartbeat. Vampire, blood of immortal night, stepped forward. Caroline moved to the altar, her gaze meeting Harrison's briefly before she took the knife. With this offering, I bridge the gap between life and death, she recited, drawing the blade across her palm. Her blood fell into the bowl, and the golden light turned more complex, threads of silver beginning to weave through it. Witch, blood of Earth's power, stepped forward. Bonnie approached, her expression solemn. As a Bennett witch, she understood perhaps better than anyone the significance of freely given magic versus that taken by force. With this offering, I connect the natural world to that beyond, she said, making her cut precisely. When her blood joined the mixture, the light changed again, now swirling with greens and blues alongside the gold and silver. Harrison turned finally to Klaus. Hybrid, bound and divided, step forward and complete the circle. Klaus rose, moving to stand before Harrison. For a moment, something of his old self flickered across his face: calculation, wariness, the instinct to seize power rather than submit to ritual. But then his expression cleared, resolve replacing suspicion. With this offering, Klaus said, taking the knife, I accept both halves of my nature and seek harmony between them. He cut deeply into his palm, allowing his blood, more powerful than any other in the circle, to pour into the bowl. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. The mixture of blood erupted in a column of multicolored light, rising toward the full moon overhead. Harrison raised the elder wand, channeling its power into the moonstone. Finite incantatem, he called out, the spell feeling right despite being used for a purpose far beyond its original design. By freely given power, by willing sacrifice, by balance restored, I break the curse that binds the wolf within. He plunged the moonstone into the column of light. The stone shattered on contact, releasing centuries of stored magical energy. The fragments dissolved into the blood mixture, which began to swirl with increasing speed, forming a vortex of pure magical power. Harrison focused all his concentration, all his will, into directing that power. This was the crucial moment, channeling the released energy not into destruction, as the original curse had done, but into healing, into balance. Klaus Mikaelson, Harrison intoned. Reclaim your full nature. Wolf and vampire, predator and protector, darkness and light in equal measure. The vortex collapsed suddenly inward, then exploded outward in a shockwave that knocked everyone but Harrison off their feet. The magical energy coalesced around Klaus, enveloping him in light so bright it was painful to behold. Klaus's back arched, a primal scream tearing from his throat, not of pain but of release. Centuries of suppression, of rage, of fighting against his true nature, all purged in a single cathartic moment. The light pulsed once more, blindingly bright, then vanished. Silence fell over the quarry. Harrison lowered the elder wand, exhaustion hitting him like a physical blow. He had channeled more magical energy in the past few minutes than in all his centuries as Harrison Mikaelson, or even in his life as Harry Potter. Klaus? He called, peering through the residual magical haze that hung over the altar. A low growl answered him, not threatening but primal. As the haze cleared, Harrison saw his brother on all fours, his form halfway between man and wolf. Eyes glowing amber, fangs extended, but with full consciousness behind them. Brother? Harrison tried again. Did it work? Slowly, deliberately, Klaus shifted back to his human form, the transformation smooth and controlled rather than the agonizing process werewolves typically endured. Yes, Klaus said, his voice hoarse but triumphant. I can feel it. both sides of my nature in balance. He stood, looking at his hands as if seeing them anew. The rage, it's still there, but distant. Controllable. Elijah stepped forward, caution in his movements. Niklaus? How do you feel? Klaus turned to his elder brother, a complex mixture of emotions playing across his features. Whole, he finally said. For the first time in 1,000 years I feel whole. The simple declaration hung in the air, profound in its implications. The others were picking themselves up, checking for injuries, marveling at having survived what by all rights should have been impossible. It worked, Caroline said, appearing at Harrison's side. You actually did it. We did it, Harrison corrected, including everyone in his gaze. It required all of us. Elena approached cautiously, Stefan hovering protectively beside her. So it's over? She asked. The sacrifice, the curse, all of it. Klaus turned to her. The curse is broken, yes. And as promised, I will swear a binding oath to leave Mystic Falls and never harm you or yours. He hesitated, something almost like humility crossing his features. I also owe you my gratitude, Elena Gilbert. Your willingness to participate when you had every reason to refuse, it won't be forgotten. Elena seemed startled by the genuine sentiment from the vampire who had hunted her. You're welcome, she managed. Bonnie joined them, her expression cautious but curious. The magic you used, she said to Harrison. It was unlike anything in the Bennett grimoires. It felt pure somehow. Magic from my original world operates differently, Harrison explained. It's more intentional, less formulaic. The wizard or witch channels power through their own will, their own moral choice, rather than through external forces or spirits. Could you teach me? Bonnie asked, surprising everyone including herself. Not to become a, whatever you are. But some of the principles, the approach to magic. Harrison considered her request seriously. Perhaps. Though the magic of your bloodline is powerful in its own right, Bonnie. It might be better to master that tradition before exploring others. Bonnie nodded, accepting his wisdom. Still, I'd like to learn more, when this is all settled. As would I, Elijah interjected, looking at Harrison with new respect. It seems there's much about magic we've misunderstood over the centuries. As the group dispersed into smaller conversations, the tension of the night finally dissipating, Rebekah approached Harrison. Quite the performance, brother, she said, her tone light though her eyes were serious. I don't think even Mother could have managed something so elegant. High praise indeed, Harrison replied with a small smile. Though I suspect our mother would have found a way to include at least one dramatic sacrifice. True enough, Rebekah agreed. She glanced toward Caroline, who was speaking with Elena nearby. Your baby vampire handled herself well tonight. She did, Harrison acknowledged. Caroline Forbes is full of surprises. Yes, Rebekah said thoughtfully. I'm beginning to see what you find so compelling about her. She met his gaze directly. Perhaps there's room for exploration. If she's amenable. Harrison's eyebrows rose at the implication. Becca, are you suggesting? Don't look so shocked. She cut him off with a smirk. 1,000 years of existence teaches one to be adaptable. Besides, her expression turned more serious. Happiness has been rare enough in our long lives. If this arrangement brings you joy, brings us all joy, who am I to stand in its way? Before Harrison could respond to this unexpected development, Klaus approached, now fully dressed and composed once more. I believe I have an oath to swear, he said, nodding toward Elena, who was preparing to leave with Stefan. And then, plans to make. You're leaving immediately? Harrison asked, surprised. Best not to overstay my welcome, Klaus replied pragmatically. Besides, I have 1,000 years of existence to reconsider now. That requires some solitude, I think. Where will you go? Rebekah asked. Klaus shrugged. New Orleans, perhaps. I've unfinished business there. He looked at his siblings. You're welcome to join me, of course. Any of you. The invitation hung in the air between them, The first time in centuries that Klaus had offered companionship rather than demanding it. Perhaps, Elijah said noncommittally. In time. Klaus nodded, accepting the response without anger. Another sign of the change wrought by the ritual. He turned to Harrison. And you, brother? Will you come to New Orleans eventually? Bring your unique perspective to our family's next chapter? Harrison glanced toward Caroline, who was now watching their conversation with undisguised interest. I have reasons to stay in Mystic Falls, he said. For now. But yes, I think we'll find our way back to each other. Family always does. Klaus followed his gaze, understanding dawning in his eyes. Ah, yes. Miss Forbes. He smiled slightly. A formidable young vampire. She reminds me a bit of Hermione Granger. Harrison finished for him. Yes, I know. Klaus's smile widened. I was going to say Rebekah, actually. That same fire, that unwillingness to be intimidated even when facing creatures far older and more powerful. He shrugged. But your comparison works too, I suppose. With that parting observation, Klaus moved away to complete his oath to Elena, leaving Harrison and Rebekah exchanging surprised glances. Like me? Rebekah repeated. Caroline Forbes? He might have a point. Harrison mused, looking between the two blonde vampires. You both share certain qualities. Determination. Loyalty. A refusal to be underestimated. Rebekah rolled her eyes, though she seemed pleased by the comparison. Now you're just trying to flatter me. Is it working? Harrison asked with a grin. Perhaps, she admitted. Though it will take more than flattery to navigate the arrangement you're proposing. I know. Harrison acknowledged, his expression turning more serious. It will take time, and patience, and honest communication from all of us. Rebekah nodded. Yes, it will. She glanced again at Caroline. But perhaps it's worth the effort. As the ritual participants prepared to leave the quarry, the night's momentous events concluded. Harrison found himself at a crossroads both literal and figurative. The breaking of Klaus's curse had changed everything, not just for his brother, but for all of them. The future stretched before him, uncertain but full of possibilities. For the first time in centuries, Harrison felt truly alive, truly present in his existence. Neither solely Harry Potter nor exclusively Harrison Mikaelson, but something new, something that honored both lives, both sets of memories, both magical traditions. And perhaps most miraculously, he wouldn't face that future alone. 3 months later, Caroline Forbes stood on the balcony of Harrison's cabin, watching the sun set over the forests of Mystic Falls. Summer had turned to early autumn, the first hints of color beginning to appear in the treetops. So much had changed since that night at the quarry. Klaus had honored his oath, leaving Mystic Falls though maintaining occasional contact through Elijah. The elder original had stayed, establishing himself as a surprising ally to the Salvatore brothers and maintaining peace in the supernaturally active town. Rebekah had enrolled in Mystic Falls High School. For the experience, she claimed, though Caroline suspected she simply enjoyed the drama of teenage life after centuries of adult existence. The original sister had integrated herself into Caroline's social circle with surprising ease, her ancient perspective bringing an interesting dimension to their group dynamics. And Harrison? Caroline smiled, thinking of the changes in him. With his memories fully integrated, he had found a balance between the moral certainty of Harry Potter and the pragmatic immortality of Harrison Mikaelson. He had begun teaching Bonnie aspects of his unique magic, creating a hybrid approach that honored both magical traditions. More personally, he had become a constant in Caroline's life, sometimes mentor, sometimes lover, always friend. Their connection had deepened beyond the initial soul echo he had perceived, becoming something uniquely their own. And then there was the evolving dynamic between Caroline, Harrison, and Rebekah. What had begun as an awkward triangle had gradually transformed into something more fluid, more honest. Centuries of vampire existence had indeed created different parameters for relationships, as Harrison had tried to explain that night by the falls. The sound of the cabin door opening behind her pulled Caroline from her reflections. Harrison stepped onto the balcony, two blood-filled wine glasses in hand. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked, offering her one of the glasses. Caroline accepted it with a smile. "Just thinking about everything that's changed. How different life is now compared to 3 months ago." "Regrets?" Harrison asked, a hint of vulnerability beneath the casual question. "None," Caroline replied honestly. "Though I still can't believe I'm, whatever we are, with an original vampire who's actually the reincarnation of a wizard from another dimension." Harrison laughed, the sound warming her even in the cooling evening air. "When you put it that way, it does sound rather improbable. And yet here we are." Caroline gestured expansively at the forest around them. "Living our improbable lives." "Here we are," Harrison agreed, clinking his glass against hers. "Though I prefer to think of it as extraordinary rather than improbable." Caroline smiled, leaning against the balcony railing. "Have you heard from Klaus?" "A message yesterday," Harrison confirmed. "He's establishing himself in New Orleans, reconnecting with old allies. The balance we achieved in the ritual seems to be holding. He's less driven by rage, more focused on building something lasting." "And Elijah? Will he join Klaus eventually?" Harrison shrugged. "Perhaps. Elijah has his own journey to make. 1,000 years of single-minded focus on saving Klaus has left him somewhat adrift now that Klaus no longer needs saving." "And us?" Caroline asked, the question she'd been circling finally emerging. "What's our journey, Harrison?" Harrison set down his glass, turning to face her fully. "Whatever we choose it to be, Caroline. That's the beauty of immortality. Time to explore all possibilities, all permutations of existence. With Rebekah," Caroline added, making it half statement, half question. "If that's what we all want," Harrison confirmed. "The arrangement seems to be working, doesn't it?" Caroline considered this. The past month had seen a gradual deepening of trust between herself and Rebekah, facilitated by Harrison but evolving in its own unique way. What had begun as reluctant sharing had transformed into something more genuine, more equal. "It is," she acknowledged. "Though it's still strange sometimes. Not the logistics," she blushed slightly, "but the emotions. The way we're creating something that doesn't fit any conventional category. The best things in life rarely do," Harrison observed. "Conventional categories are for conventional existences. Ours stopped being conventional the moment we became vampires." "True enough," Caroline agreed. She hesitated, then asked the question that had been on her mind for weeks. "Do you think, in your past life, Harry Potter would approve of all this? Of what you've become? Of us?" Harrison's expression turned thoughtful. "Harry Potter valued love above all else, in all its forms. He died for it, lived again because of it." He took Caroline's hand gently. "So yes, I think he would understand that love expands to fill the vessel that contains it. That hearts grow rather than divide when given the freedom to love authentically." The simple sincerity in his words moved Caroline deeply. She set aside her glass and stepped into his embrace, her head resting against his chest where a heart that had witnessed a millennium of existence beat steadily. "I love you," she said quietly. "Both parts of you, Harrison and Harry. The vampire and the wizard. The immortal and the boy who died to save others." Harrison's arms tightened around her. "And I love you, Caroline Forbes. The vampire cheerleader with the soul of a warrior." They stood together as twilight deepened into true night, the first stars appearing overhead. From inside the cabin came the sound of the door opening, then Rebekah's voice calling out, "If you two are done being romantic on the balcony, I brought dinner. And information about a situation in Denver that might interest us." Caroline laughed softly against Harrison's chest. "Duty calls." "Always does," Harrison agreed with a smile. "Shall we?" As they turned to join Rebekah inside, Caroline felt a sense of rightness settle over her. This unlikely family they were creating, vampire, Tribrid, original sister, might not fit any conventional definition. But it was theirs, forged through choice rather than circumstance, through love rather than obligation. In the end, perhaps that was the greatest magic of all, not spells or rituals or supernatural powers, but the simple, profound miracle of souls finding each other across time, across worlds, across all the barriers that should have kept them apart. And as Caroline took Harrison's hand, as they stepped together into the warm light of the cabin where Rebekah waited, she knew with absolute certainty that their story was just beginning. That the vows they had made to each other, spoken and unspoken, forged in blood and magic and choice, would endure not just for decades or centuries, but truly for eternity. Some bonds, after all, transcended even death itself. Harrison Mikaelson, once Harry Potter, was living proof of that eternal truth. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.